flag purchases of guns or any other product sold. It is an important point, but it is the point that I should tell you some legislation that has been proposed in Congress since that report, effectively saying that Visa and MasterCard and the other credit card companies on guns and gun-related items should mandate that they get item-by-item information so that they could actually track this, so that when you do have these erratic purchases, and in a majority of the instances of these mass shootings, there are clearly erratic buying patterns. It's not typically as simple as people think. You can actually, typically the first thing that happens after a mass shooting is they go and they get the credit card receipts. And when you look at them and you lay them out at a table, it becomes, I don't want to say obvious, but there are patterns, and using machine learning and artificial intelligence, there are clearly people now in government, especially inside the FBI and others, who think that this could be a very effective way of tracking and trying to avoid these things in advance.
Well, you've been all over this issue, and I remember talking to you about a year ago when it was still kind of in formation in your brain. It's counterintuitive to the viewers, but indeed Visa and MasterCard do not have that consumer line item level data. The issuing banks do.
The issuing banks don't. The issuing banks don't. That's what's so fascinating about this issue. So who does? Then the retailer itself? The only people who have the information is the retailer themselves. Okay. And the problem with the system is that, and what happens actually in a lot of these instances is you'll go from one store, you'll buy 2 guns at one store, a third gun here, you'll buy your body armor over here, and you'll go to a website and buy 1,200 rounds of ammunition here.
And so you'll do that. With that is imposing any kind of regulations on the retailers wouldn't address
none of the regulations that are on the books today there's nothing that allows effectively right now law enforcement to see any of that. And the only people who ostensibly even have a shot at that ostensibly would be the credit card companies and Visa and MasterCard, if they so chose to.
But they would have to mandate that every retailer
they would have to mandate that retailers
and the world
for those types of products have to do that. And by the way, this is not completely without precedent. So right now, you should know that there are what are called SARS reports, suspicious activity reports, that are filed every single day by banks, simply for
money laundering,
simply for basic money that's being moved.
Yeah.
And so the question is whether look, there's a political question. There are some people who say, I want this all protected. I don't want anybody to know what I'm buying. I believe that this is part of, some people believe this is part of their Second Amendment right. So look, this is not a straightforward, straight line situation, but I think that I believe that if you mandated this, it would protect people's Second Amendment rights, but at the same time, potentially allow law enforcement to get ahead of these things to the extent they can. One man's argument. We will continue Squawk Box in just a moment. What do you got, Brian?
All right, coming up, we're going to get ready for a record-breaking number of travelers in America. So, all you folks hitting the roads or the airports or, God bless you, Penn Station today, we're going to give you a travel forecast straight ahead, and later on, former Showtime CEO Matt Blank will join us. So, we were just argued about this at the commercial break. What are the best streaming shows of the year? We'll dig in. We'll get some new ideas for you. No doubt we'll argue about it. You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC.
The S&P 500. You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year? I want a new phone. One with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12th 19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
19p?
What will that get you at Christmas? 5 minutes at a panto, a very unpopular Secret Santa. This week at Tesco, you can get sprouts, carrots, or parsnips from just 19p, our festive 3. That should get you on the nice list. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Selected stores excludes Express, ends 26th of December.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Hi, I'm Tom Haberstroh, host of the Haberstroh podcast. I'm partnering with TuneIn to answer a few questions and get you prepped for NBA Christmas Day. My favorite NBA Christmas memory is, I got to go with 2010 Heat Lakers. First year of the LeBron in Miami, going to the Staples Center against Kobe and the defending champion Lakers. Everything said the Lakers were going to win that game, but LeBron had a triple-double and blew out the Lakers. Search The Haber Show to listen to new episodes every Friday throughout the NBA season on TuneIn.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade.
Don't believe me, just watch.
The 2010s saw the rise of the viral hit when meme-ready tracks like Gangnam Style,
Oppan Gangnam Style,
The Harlem Shake,
The Harlem Shake,
What Does the Fox Say?
What Does the Fox Say?
And of course, Old Town Road snowballed from internet oddities to global phenomenons.
I got the horses in the bag. Horse stock is attached.
Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
All right, according to AAA, we're going to see a record-breaking 115 million Americans traveling this holiday season. And joining us now is Robert Sinclair, AAA Northeast Media Relations Manager and Spokesman. Oh my gosh! Yes. As somebody who lives in New Jersey, please help? How bad is it going to be?
It's going to be very bad, particularly if you're in New Jersey. We've identified certain major roads in certain cities around the country that will be very bad. And we're expecting in some cities a 3 or 4 multiplier, meaning that if your trip normally takes an hour, it might take 3 or 4 hours.
Wow.
So,
I love CNBC. I love CNBC last night in Inglewood Cliffs at about 3:50 p.m. Walked in the door at 6:45.
Wow.
And it was 51 miles.
Holy smokes.
That's a long time.
That's the honey, break out the wine.
Where
are some of the worst places besides?
Well, right here, most of the major cities, New York, Boston, Chicago, LA, Atlanta, it's going to be very bad. We were seeing overall an increase in travel. The Federal Highway Administration says we're driving 250 billion miles every month. 3.3 trillion miles a year. We're burning gasoline like crazy. There are more vehicles registered in every city around the country.
That's because of the strong economy, I assume?
Strong economy, without a doubt. And Americans get the fewest number of vacation days of any workers in the industrialized world. So we give you a few days off. You've got extra money in your pocket. You take advantage of it. You take a trip, and 90% of those people are going to drive to their destination. If you look at rental car rates, which are up 11% compared to last year, it makes sense.
You guys have got to be busy because you live in the city. You're in the city. Tom, you're in the city. So I'm the only ding dong who commutes by car on this round table. Thanks to our friends, the cell phone.
Yes.
Anecdotally, the number of fender benders is just up. There's every night when I drive every day. There's like 4 or 5. Thankfully, not major accidents, but just enough that the people get out.
Yep.
They take pictures. I mean, there's no visible damage, but they're
blocking
in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
First off, people, move over. If the car's fine and you're fine, go over to the side.
I want to ask our guest about that because I've been told you're not supposed to move. You should take the picture where it happens so that if there has to be a police report or something filed, you're not supposed to move. There's a lot of people who don't move because of this.
So I just gave people I am not trying to get people to break the law. If that is the law, I did not know.
No, I'm wondering
it's not necessarily a law. It's a recommendation.
The lawyers tell you to take the pictures in the moment.
Yeah,
right?
Have a dash cam. And that helps even
more.
more.
You think a dash cam?
Yeah, have
That's
a dash
interesting.
cam.
Get
look out the
yourself a
front,
dash
one
cam
that
for
looks
Christmas.
out the back. Yeah.
You have one?
I have one in every single one of the vehicles in the family. Yeah,
Only in the
5
front
of them.
or in the back?
Just for the front. I'm looking for the ones that work for the back as well, but they're either wired or wireless, and neither is working particularly well.
And I have no stake in this. I will say this: get yourself I've been a AAA member forever. The discounts more than pay for the membership.
Yes, without a doubt.
I feel like a senior citizen. I'm like, I'm always clicking the AAA discount.
Unsolicited testimonial. I love it. I love it. But we're anticipating 853,000 breakdowns for the holiday travel period. That's from the 21st through the 1st. And the top items are flat tires and dead batteries. And more people are locking themselves out of their vehicles, modern vehicles. You step out, leave the quote-unquote key inside. It locks itself. But the flat tires, check your tire pressure before you take the trip. It's very dangerous.
And by the way, gas up early. I've been noticing the gas prices on the highway are much more expensive than everywhere else because they know they can get you right there.
Yeah, they've got
Coming up, we're going to talk about this.
Johnson & Johnson.
The Better Network is now on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search the Better Network. That's the BETR Network. And then let us get you better prepared to better enjoy the day in sports. The NFL, college football, basketball, hockey, baseball. Sharpen your edge. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Search the Better Network. That's BETR.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in!
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Whether you call yourself a Democrat, Republican, Independent, or something else, the road to 2020 is on TuneIn.
What a night!
And a complete earthquake. This was
Follow every step of the Democratic primaries while hearing the latest headlines from the White House with live 24-hour news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News Talk, and more.
We're closing in on the first results in the battle for the White House.
Experience the election through the sources you trust with the nonstop news channels on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Ho, ho, ho. Want to make Santa's job a whole lot easier this year? TuneIn Premium is the gift your loved ones can enjoy all year long. Featuring commercial-free news from MSNBC, Fox News Talk, and CNBC.
Global concerns about climate change not
the most generous state in the U.S. on GoFundMe is...
Plus, commercial-free music and live sports. TuneIn Premium brings the best in audio to you. Forget the stocking and stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Happy holidays. Search Premium to start your free trial.
Welcome back to Squawk Box on this Christmas Eve. We'll call it a special edition of Squawk Box. A report yesterday from CNBC revealing the existence of a secretive tech firm founded by Mike Bloomberg to aid his presidential run. The firm, called Hawkfish, will be the, quote, primary digital agency and technology service provider for the Bloomberg campaign, according to a spokesman. Joining us right now to talk about that and some other big issues in Techland right now. Charles Duhigg is here, contributor at The New Yorker. Ed Lee, reporter from The New York Times and CNBC contributor as well. What do we know about this agency and what they're doing? Do you know?
Well, he's hiring.
You're a former Bloomberg man, we should say.
I am a former Bloomberg man, so I
Full
know.
disclosure. What do you know? Tell us.
Well, I don't have any ties to the company anymore, but it's.
What do you know?
Well, I don't know more specifically about this firm, but he's always been good at figuring out ways to, you know what, I need to get the talent in, bring them in, and then we'll solve whatever the problem is. You call it, give it a name, or you give it some kind of a incorporation. I mean, ultimately, that's less.
He built a data company.
Right.
He built the most profitable data company in the world,
And
so it's a natural fit.
Maybe the most profitable company in the world.
And he did it himself. He didn't buy other companies. He did exactly what he's doing here.
Right. The most important thing, guys like Ed and myself, who I was there 13. I was there 13. I worked for him for 13 years.
But you didn't build the data.
The most important thing that we know is that I called a contact of mine at the RNC who oversees digital, and he said this is the first time that they've actually been worried. Right? This is the first time that someone's come in who has the agility and the ability and the money to build a data operation that can challenge what the RNC used to get Trump elected 4 years ago.
Right.
And it has them terrified. A little bit terrified. Not too terrified. But enough terrified that they're paying attention.
Is this an arms race always? Like what we saw the RNC do after Barack Obama's win was say, oh, you know what, we lost that arms race, now we need to, and so now Bloomberg.
It's a very specific kind of arms race, though, because if you'll think back to when Trump was elected in 2016, the biggest issue there was that within the Clinton campaign, you had to get 3 people to sign off on an ad. And so as a result, they could run 10 to 15 experiments a day online. The Trump folks, because Trump wasn't paying any attention to what was going on, they ran 400 to 500 experiments an hour. And so for the first time, you have someone who has the ability to go out and do that experimentation. It's an arms race, but it's an experimenting
You're saying that
arms
the
race.
advantage here is less bureaucracy.
Not only less bureaucracy, but an attitude, right? Everyone who's in the primaries right now for the Dems, they're in a ground war to pick up primary voters. They're not thinking about digital, and they're not thinking about the general.
But how far ahead is Trump in terms of his digital ground game, if that's what it's called, given that you have to build database? I mean, it's not just the advertising itself, it's the database, right?
Absolutely. That database is critical, and the only way you get it is by running all these experiments, by going out and vacuuming up all the data that you can't buy from data brokers. He has a huge advantage, because first of all, they did this 4 years ago, and second of all, they've spent the last 3 years. The White House might be a mess, the RNC is not, because he has nothing to do with it.
Did you feel that was an underreported story in the last election, the sophistication of the digital campaign?
I think it's always an underreported story because we don't know until afterwards what people are doing and what works and what doesn't
also,
work.
it keeps changing, right? What works on Facebook versus Twitter versus open Google, and I think getting all those experiments in is what's helping do that. Trump has been the most successful on Facebook as a politician in terms of reaching the audience or finding the new audience, the new voters that haven't voted before, and I think that's what drove a lot.
This is a longer conversation, and we're out of time. Do you think there's a chance, though, that all this digital spending can actually work?
Absolutely. Now, what we don't know, we do know that digital spending can win a general election. We don't know if it can win a primary.
Right.
And for the first time, because Super Tuesday is 1/3 of the American voters are going to be voting on Super Tuesday. Bloomberg could prove something.
We're over time. Charles, Ed, Merry Christmas. Thank you, guys. And check out the story on CNBC.com. We're right back with 2 big hours on this Christmas Eve right here on CNBC.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
19p? What will that get you at Christmas? 5 minutes to Panto, a very unpopular Secret Santa. This week at Tesco, you can get sprouts, carrots, or parsnips from just 19p. Our festive 3. That should get you on the nice list. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Selected stores excludes Express, ends 26th of December.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, plunges into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and flows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Spend Christmas Day listening to the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Featuring 5 big matchups on the holiday schedule. Unwrap the action starting at 12 Eastern when the Celtics take on the Raptors in Toronto, followed by the Bucks and the 76ers at 2:30. The holiday cheers continue with the Rockets and Warriors at 5 and the Clippers and Lakers at 8. And a showdown between the Pelicans and Nuggets at 10:30. 'Tis the season with the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
It's the day before Christmas. Joe and Becky are gone, but Andrew and Sully are here to push on. And they're not alone, not by any degree. We brought in Tom Farley and our friend MCC. It's been a bad year for Boeing, the stock price in question. Will the new CEO cause a volatile session? The tickers are moving, and we'll summarize just how the markets keep hitting new highs. Trade talks advancing, but will Trump reveal when China will sign a Phase 1 trade deal? Kick back and relax. The year's almost done. Squawk Box begins in 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. Welcome to Squawk Box, a special edition, we should say, on this Christmas Eve right here on CNBC. That should be our new theme music, I think, every day.
It's impossible to not be in a good
right?
mood.
You're
when
in a good
you get
mood.
Played in with that.
I'm
song.
Andrew Ross Sorkin. Brian Sullivan is here today. Joe and Becky are off, but in studio with us this morning, CNBC contributor Michelle Caruso-Cabrera back at the table, and Tom Farley, chairman and CEO of Farpoint Acquisition Group, also a CNBC contributor, wearing the best blazer of the year, amortizing that thing. How many times a year can you wear that?
Once a year.
Once a year.
Merry Christmas.
Very nice. Also, Carlos Watson is here, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Aussie.com. You're wearing purple. You didn't get the...
I'm wearing purple. I didn't do the Tom thing. I didn't want to crowd him.
I see. I like that.
You're wearing a lot better than I would. Maybe we'll swap. We'll swap.
Very nice. Very nice.
Holidays at the break.
And take a look at U.S. equity futures at this hour. It's going to match your tree, which is good. Dow looks like it would open up about 18.5 points right now this morning. S&P 500 up about 2 points. The NASDAQ looking to open up higher as well, a little over 9 points higher. Brian.
All right, here's what's making headlines at this hour on Christmas Eve. Boeing has told its 737 MAX suppliers to suspend part shipments for a month beginning in mid-January. The jet, of course, is still grounded, and airlines have now taken MAX flights off their schedules as far out as June. The news comes in the wake of Boeing's firing of CEO Dennis Muilenburg. A New York State judge has ruled in favor of Uber and Lyft in a lawsuit by the ride-hailing services against New York City. The ruling strikes down a rule that limited how much time drivers can spend just cruising around Manhattan without passengers. The city had passed the rule in August, hoping to reduce traffic congestion and emissions. And insurance company Geico will be getting a new CEO. The Berkshire Hathaway unit is named Todd Combs as CEO effective January 1st. Combs will also retain his duties as one of Warren Buffett's portfolio managers. One wonders, guys, is this a hat tip that this is the next guy to take over Berkshire Hathaway when Warren Buffett eventually steps down?
You know, I wish Becky was here. I think this is a big deal because I think it's a test. That's what I think this ultimately is. This is an operational test to see whether Todd Combs can be not just a great investor, but also be an operator. There are a couple of other, quote unquote, operators in the business right now that have been, flagged or tagged as potential successors as a CEO of this company. The question's always been in the future whether you would have a CEO that's operating effectively or at least overseeing the businesses, and then a separate individual who's doing the investing piece, or whether that's one person, and potentially If Todd becomes it, maybe it is one person.
And an insurance company requires both of those skill sets, right? You get all these premiums in,
Right.
and you need to invest them somewhere in order to generate the returns to pay down the road whatever you've insured. So this is a particularly good way. He's already been running the portfolio. Now can he actually run the company?
So we will see. Having said that, there's been a huge value, I know, in Todd sitting across, down the hall from Warren. He won't be down the hall now, so it'll be what that means.
20 years ago we had Jack Welch's succession battle. That was interesting and ended in a little bit of a surprise. Maybe you get a surprise on this one too.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
All right, let's get now to the markets, because you might have heard this. The S&P 500 continues to hit record highs. It's also on track for its best yearly performance all the way back since 1997. Joining us now is Simeon Hyman. He's head of investment strategy at ProShares. I mean, wow. Do you worry? We had the data a couple days ago that retail investors put $11 billion in the S&P 500 ETF on a Friday. It was the most in one day ever, or something like that. Do you worry that all of our viewers right now are sort of piling in at just the wrong time?
Well, look, the December melt-up's not a surprise, driven by two things. Okay. The opposite of what we had last year. So we had losses last year, which were compounded, people taking tax losses, getting out. This year, you have people piling in. And by the way, it's the pros, too, because PMs want to put winners on their books, so they kind of look like they were there all year.
Hey, look, I own Apple.
I own it, right?
December 12th.
Yeah. And then, of course, is it any surprise that we're having dribbles of good trade news as the impeachment heats up? You kind of knew that was going to happen. So this is of no surprise. But if you compare, and everybody wants to compare the impeachments, and the things that are similar are, late 90s, we had low inflation, low unemployment. What's different? Valuations this time around. In the end of 1998, we were at 28 times earnings with almost a 5% handle on the 10-year. This time around, we're at 21 times and only 2% on the 10-year. So at least valuations are a little bit more modest.
21 times forward earnings, Simeon, is nothing to sneeze at. That is still historically above average. But you're saying is, I guess, with interest rates and inflation where they are, we can handle the higher multiple.
We can, and if you're looking for bargains, or at least relative bargains, mid and small caps didn't quite melt up. They're at a 40% discount on a price-to-book basis, especially mid caps. Really, only that's on average of 10% historically.
1 year ago, we had an ugly, ugly sell-off. I remember that was off nearly 3%. The markets that day, it was terrible. Fast forward to a year later. What drove that sell-off a year ago was fears about the China trade war. Looks to be easing potentially. Concerns about the Fed raising interest rates. Kiss that goodbye as well, right? I mean, a lot of the big headwinds. Brexit appears to be sort of solved.
Brexit.
Yeah, and go back again to the comparison to the Clinton impeachment. We were overheating. We had over 4% GDP growth, and you don't hear a lot of people talk about this, but capacity utilization back then was almost at 83. 80's that inflection point. We're only at 77. And then, of course, you had hikes in 99 because we were overheating. So modest growth, I don't want to call it Goldilocks, but there's certainly a lot less of that pressure of overheating because this recovery has been so muted.
Because we're not at maximum industrial capacity utilization, and we're also not seeing the inflation, and the wage figures are rising, but not nearly as much as we were seeing back then.
We all think that most people think that unemployment is not quite as low as we think because people will take better jobs and stop driving Ubers if they get a better offer.
What if we're in March or April or May and it looks like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders is going to get the nomination? How does that change your view?
No, for sure that's a risk. I think
what kind of risk? How significant?
Well, there are certainly coming up to the election that we'll see some more little fiscal surprises and things from the Trump administration. We expect that. But, there's a risk if we get somebody on the far left. I don't know how to quantify it.
Well, the odds are, if you look at predicted, it's 1/5. It's 20%. Not only will they win, one of them win the nomination, but they'll win the presidency.
But remember, they have to get those policies enacted. So a lot of some things we know from both the Obama and the Trump administrations, there's probably more latitude for the executive branch to do things than we kind of all thought 20 years ago, but there's still limitations.
What do you think about this? I had a meeting, a dinner with some people in the markets, whatever, and I said, what's the real political risk of Elizabeth? And they said it's not political. They said here's their concern with this proposed transactions tax. So much of the market is now high frequency trading. You effectively kill those guys, right? Because now the tax renders their whole business unprofitable. No one's going to care because they're billionaires. They got plenty of money. No one feels sorry for them. But there's such a huge part of the volume and liquidity of the market now, there is a real concern that if that goes away, is the market structure able to handle that? And that's what, I don't know. What do you think, Tom? This is your whole world, man.
Yeah, I think it's stupid. I mean, I think it would be
That idea is stupid?
Yeah, it would be a tax on the entire
Or my
economy.
guess
It'd be a
was-
wet blanket. No, I think a financial transaction tax would be a wet blanket on the entire economy. Spreads would widen. Cost of capital would increase. These are the sorts of things you will get from an Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders presidency.
But even if you don't get them, the question is what the SEC can do, what different regulators can do. The amount of phone calls, I mean, even if you don't get legislation, there are real things you can do.
The limitations are there. You know,
No, I know there are limitations,
but what we know about markets is that the favorite thing that the markets have is gridlock. So to the extent there at least be probably a split between a House and the Senate, will be limitations on how aggressively right or left the executive branch could go.
Hey, Simeon, let me take you out to Silicon Valley. A lot of folks are talking about more IPOs in the first half of the year as people get concerned about recessions. IPOs weren't great this year. But what if there is a nice run of IPOs? What does that do? How does the market receive that, and how does that influence?
I think it'd be well received. I mean, if you're looking at tech valuations, they're not what they were, back in the late 90s. And if you're looking at growth versus value, in fact, the relative price to book of growth over value has actually retreated to just below its long-term average. So there's certainly some room for some of that activity.
Would that not only help the new companies that may go public like Airbnb, but would it also come back and help the folks like Lyft and Uber and others who went public but have struggled as public companies?
Yes, but I think it's also almost paradoxically going to help old tech. We've seen some old tech, of course, like Microsoft's in the headlines, but some of the tech dividend players who have lagged a little bit over the last year or so.
Who are you putting on that list?
Microsoft, Oracle, some of the old school names, and Apple, by the way, which has increased its dividend for 6 years in a row. Those are some companies that are having some traction. And again, you think those valuations are stretched, but we're only at about 2.2 times relative book of growth over value. That was 4 in 99.
What a moment to start calling Apple kind of old media, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think Apple's old.
Simeon, thank you very much.
Happy holidays.
All right, Simeon, happy holidays. Happy New Year. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
A lot more on Squawk coming up. How one online mortgage lender says it is reducing bias in lending. But first, make sure to subscribe to our podcast, Squawk Pod. You can get interviews, behind-the-scenes access, and so much more. I say it all the time. This is not just a repeat of Squawk. It genuinely is so much more. If you haven't listened, you need to. Katie Kramer is our voice, and she's amazing. You can get your podcasts. You can get it everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and more. Stay tuned. You're watching Squawk on CNBC.
Apps are used everywhere except work.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Can you think of a better use for the time you spend keying in your business accounts? Good. Because smarter bookkeeping from Sage reduces that time dramatically, simply by taking care of repetitive tasks. It's helpful ideas like these that make us the UK's #1 for managing finance, operations and people. Trusted by over 1 million businesses nationwide. Find out more at sage.com/automate.
At Asda this Christmas, our whole basted turkey is just £4 a kilo, and our Growers Selection vegetables are only 20p per pack. Get a broccoli, 1 kilogram of carrots, and 500 grams of parsnips or sprouts. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Broccoli, 360 grams, ends 26th of December.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year?
I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Hi, I'm Tom Haberstroh, host of the Haberstroh podcast. I'm partnering with TuneIn to answer a few questions and get you prepped for NBA Christmas Day. My favorite NBA Christmas memory is, I got to go with 2010 Heat Lakers. First year of the LeBron in Miami, going to the Staples Center against Kobe and the defending champion Lakers. Everything said the Lakers were going to win that game, but LeBron had a triple-double and blew out the Lakers. Search The Haber Show to listen to new episodes every Friday throughout the NBA season on TuneIn.
Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. More and more Americans are shopping for a mortgage online and getting approved on an online app, and that is actually helping some undeserved, or underserved, I should say, not undeserved. These are very deserving, but underserved borrowers close in on a loan. And Diana Olick joins us now with this great story. I feel like I've already undermined the story, but it's, or maybe I'm selling it in a different way. Diana.
Now, look, online lending is taking over the mortgage market with older names like Quicken and LendingTree, as well as upstarts like Better.com. And these online platforms may actually be leveling the playing field for borrowers and reducing bias in the market. Better.com, which reported 350% growth itself last year, also found some interesting numbers regarding its borrowers. A 10-fold increase in married LGBTQ couples, 5 times the number of single women, a 675% jump in Gen Z borrowers, over 500% growth for Hispanics, and over 400% growth for African Americans. Now, the company's CEO says online lending is removing personalities and bias and just relying on financial numbers. Better.com's agents do not work on commission.
A mortgage broker might judge and say, hey, maybe you shouldn't qualify for this, or you shouldn't buy in a particular neighborhood, or maybe your monthly payment should be this. We're able to express the criteria that all the major investors and the government-sponsored enterprises like Fannie Mae have, and take that judgment out of the process and actually empower the consumer to make their own best decision.
Now, more than 40% of Better.com's customers use their mobile phones to start the mortgage process. And Vishal Garg says Better.com did $700 million in loans this year and expects to do at least $2 billion in 2020. Andrew?
Okay, Diana Olick, thank you so very much. Merry Christmas.
Christmas to you, too.
Reminds me of blind auditions in the orchestra. Can't see anybody.
Right.
They do it behind the curtain. And then you
Is that how they do it?
A lot of orchestras do, yeah.
I did not know that.
Malcolm Gladwell's written about it, yeah.
You know where something like that helps? Car loans. More people, particularly more African Americans and Latinos, ended up buying cars online because they thought they would get a fair price. So maybe work with homes too.
So interesting.
Yeah.
All right, coming up, you know what else is interesting? The streaming wars, and methinks you like to talk about it, Andrew.
I do.
The streaming wars, you might have heard, are heating up. I would say they're red hot. We're going to speak with some of the winners and losers with former Showtime CEO Matt Blank. Also, we'll argue for hours over just what is, Carlos, the best new show of the year. That's coming up.
Oh, I got one for you.
Oh, yeah, I bet you do.
Wait,
But hold that.
that's
We gotta
a tease.
save
That's
it.
a tease.
Commercial break.
Tease.
Commercial break. Stand by.
Forrest Whitaker.
Coach Saban convinced us. We're committing to Aflac.
At Asda, we're serving up a real feast this Christmas with our whole salmon at just £4.97 per kilo, and with our extra special beef joint and our extra special corn-fed whole turkey, both just £5.97 per kilo. All you have to do now is choose. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Beef and salmon price valid until 26th of December.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
With 2020 on the horizon, TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2010, the passing of the Affordable Care Act brings Obamacare to millions of uninsured Americans. In 2015, a ruling by Supreme Court legalizes same-sex marriage across the country. And in 2018, millions of students skip school to protest for stronger gun control in the March for Our Lives.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade. The 2010s saw yet another revolution in the way we listen to music. With music fans giving up CDs and digital downloads for streaming services and internet radio like TuneIn. At the same time, vinyl sales continue to rise to levels not seen since the format's original decline. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Welcome back to Squawk Box on this Christmas Eve special. It's been quite a decade for Netflix. The company is the best performer in the S&P 500 over the past 10 years, a decade now, by far. A $1 million bet on Netflix. You want to be either happy or sad, depending on where you sit. Most people are going to be sad hearing this. If you place that bet on January 1st, 2020, would be worth... Not if you placed it on 2020.
Because that'd be in the future. And
right.
You have to be
If you placed that bet in 2010, it would be worth now $43 million.
Bottom line, they made a lot of people really, really rich.
Really, really rich. Most of us not, but we wish we could be. Joining us right now to discuss Netflix's evolution to become a streaming giant and what is in store for the year ahead in the world of streaming, former Showtime CEO Matt Blank, who is here wearing his Hanukkah blazer.
Well,
right?
sort of.
I think I like that, though.
I like that you got that. I wanted to get that. We only heard about Tom's
Why
jacket.
didn't we get the memo, Carlos?
I know.
I'm all dressed up. He's in a sweater. I don't know what he's...
It's
I got
Christmas
the sweater. I got the sweater. I put the suit away.
It looks good.
Someone took a kilt and made a suit.
That is the kilt move.
I don't know. What are you wearing? I got a kilt up top.
So my question for Matt is, obviously Netflix has had this remarkable run. The question is it possible for it to continue at anywhere near that rate?
No, not near that rate. But do I think Netflix is still not going to be the big player if we're here a year from now, 5 years from now? Of course they're going to be.
Do you think that there's only going to be one or two of these companies that dominate? I mean, we've now had a couple of analysts come on and say, look, only two can dominate. It'll be Netflix and Disney.
Yeah, maybe three, maybe four.
Okay.
I think that you got a couple players out there that I think will be big. I think Amazon's still going to be big. I think
is Amazon going to be big because of Prime and shipping and everything else, or is Amazon going to be big because of the content unto itself?
I don't know. I just finished watching Jack Ryan and Mrs.
Second
Maisel.
season.
Yeah. And it was great. I think they're going to be a big player in their own in Prime.
Your wording was very strong on Netflix. So you're that confident that they are going to be the leader or one or two?
Nobody remembers where these guys come from. They don't come from big studio lots and corner offices on 6th Avenue. You know, a dozen years ago, if you wanted to watch Spider-Man on Netflix, you waited for an orthopedic surgeon in Durham, North Carolina, to send it back to them and send it to you. I mean,
and he never did.
I never.
That's why they only had 9 million subscribers at one time, right?
Everybody talks about the Netflix killers. These guys are the original killers, and I think
they're throwing cash on a fire. Here's my issue.
Yeah, but everybody is.
So to Andrew's point, Amazon, Apple, They've got so much cash, they can make 40 shows, and if 2 are hits, they don't care. Netflix doesn't have another source of revenue.
They just borrow and borrow and borrow.
But you know, Brian,
that may be their real advantage. This is what they do.
Fair enough.
But you know, you and I talked about during the break that I'm watching less of it. I feel like I've almost hit my peak moment. I felt like in 2017, 2018, I was watching a ton of Netflix.
But you're not going to pay that bill?
I'm going to pay the bill, but quantity is not quality. And now we're talking about different shows like on Epics, like The Godfather of Harlem and other things. And so it's easy to shift my attention because there's not a lot of
Carlos,
friction.
I wonder, well, bring back that 10-year chart.
Okay.
Yes, over 10 years, you made a ton of money. But if we bring up that chart again, the last 2 years has been pretty indecisive. You actually haven't made that much. Can we get the 10-year chart up again so we can tell? See what happens there? Going back to... You know, you had a great run from 2010 to late 2017, and now you've been kind of stuck.
You guys are talking about them throwing money at things. I mean, look at the past week or so. You saw Amazon and Apple each spend $25 million for a music documentary. Billie Eilish at Apple and Rihanna at Amazon, $25 million. Showtime used to spend $400,000 for a documentary. The world is changing. Now, there might be a lot more...
Isn't that the point, Matt? That Netflix is going to have sustained, vigorous competition. And it's possible 10 years from now, they're part of one of those other companies with a deeper pot of cash.
I always think that your parent company, Comcast, would be the perfect buyer for Netflix at some point if the valuation comes down.
By the way,
or Apple.
That's what I was going to say.
Now you got Andrew interested.
Cover of Hollywood, the Hollywood Reporter has a prediction for next year saying that Apple ultimately buys Netflix. Obviously, there's been conversations, Apple looking at whether they need a library, whether they should buy MGM. They were talking to the Pac-12.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the moment it's a function of valuation. Netflix valuation comes down. You know, is it easier for somebody to justify buying?
But at a 70 or 80 PE, they can't do the acquisition. But if it keeps creeping down, you could see
I think an Apple can do an acquisition.
It's not out yet. But talking about
if they want to, it's just not rational.
Talking about the parent company of this network, Peacock is coming.
Yes.
What do you think that's going to be? And do you think that can work as an advertising-supported product?
You know, it's hard to say. We're going to have to see what that's like. I think they were a little bit late to the game and a little bit slow. I think they're saying something that's not irrational. They're saying, gee, these legacy businesses are pretty good businesses. And, you know, we don't want to just shut down these legacy businesses and say we're in the streaming business. So it's ad-supported or no ads for a certain price, and we'll see what happens. But again, you know, we've talked about this before. It's going to take years because of all these free subscribers to see what's happening. These free subscribers are going to be moving through the universe for the next 2 or 3 years for all these services, and you're really not going to know what these businesses look like.
It's like the early days of the internet where people got everything free and then slowly migrate them to paying.
It's getting harder to find stuff. It's just there's so much stuff.
Well, everybody has that complaint.
And all the apps, and they sort of, you know, it's like unless you literally, like you just got to go on the internet and then you're just going on other people's recommendations. Well, I feel like these apps and streaming, Matt, is all starting to look a lot like television.
Well, that's a good point.
Amazon's a channel.
Suppose you turn on to Netflix or Amazon Prime or Apple Plus. Maybe there'll be a live feed in the corner of your screen.
What's the best show?
What about cable, though? I still find that I'm finding more and more good shows, not only on your old network, Showtime, but on FX, on Epics, on other places. Are we writing them off too soon? Is that, in fact, not where the heat is at the moment if you're a consumer?
Yeah, look, I hope people are watching. You can stream the first 6 episodes of Ray Donovan right now. Because it's you know, halfway through the season. You know, look, I'm obviously very dedicated to my old employer, and Homeland's coming back for its final season. You see things like Schitt's Creek coming back to pop right after the holidays, one of the great shows. There's a lot of good stuff out there. The question is how and when does it end up on Netflix or Hulu? Or
and I want to be clear, it's SCHITTS.
Yes.
Creek. I just think somebody on the radio going, what do you say?
Matt, want to thank you for coming in.
Sure.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah,
Thank you.
Christmas. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Great to see you.
Happy New Year.
All right, still to come on Squawk Box, consumer spending then and now. What's different? What's the same? What do we mean when we mean then? I don't even know what we're talking about. What all this tells us about the future of retail. You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC.
Perfect gift for me would be completions and connections left from last year. Ski shop things work. If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Take 26.
Enjoy Taylor's Select Reserve Port, available for just £7.50, or Oyster Bay Sauvignon and many more for just £7 each.
I know it's Christmas, but you're getting overexcited again.
Our latest deal, Co-op, is what we do.
Offer subject to availability until stocks last on selected lines. See participating stores for details. Offer ends 3rd of January. Please drink responsibly.
Hey, NFL fan. Can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three, it's up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2018, when Texas kicker Cameron Dicker nails the game-winning field goal in the Red River Showdown against Oklahoma.
A 40-yard field goal try. Good snap and hold. The kick on its way, and the kick is good! It's good! Dicker, the kicker, comes through, and with 9 seconds...
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. We are live coming to you from the NASDAQ market site on this Christmas Eve. Consumers continue to drive the economy, but the distribution of those dollars is changing. And we're going to get to Elon Mui, who's got that story right now.
Well, good morning, Andrew. Today, everyone else wants to talk about Christmas presents, but I'm going to talk about Christmas past. Let us rewind the clock all the way back to 1999. How were consumers spending their money back when the internet was young, Prince was on the radio, and we were facing a brand new millennium? Well, a lot more of our budget used to go toward food and clothes. Food used to eat up 13.6% of our income. Now it's 12.9%. Apparel was once almost 5% of the budget. Now it's 3%. So part of the reason is because of lower prices and the rise of fast fashion, but it's also the result of rising incomes. American consumers are making more, so a smaller share of the budget needs to go toward necessities. There's also more good news for consumers on the housing front. While the share of income that we spend on housing has stayed the same, we're paying a lot less in mortgage interest. Thank you, Federal Reserve. Now, a 30-year fixed mortgage in 1999 used to be 7.4%. Today, it is less than half that. So, of course, that means we should all have a lot of extra money, right? Not so fast. Take a look at healthcare costs. They have gone up from 5.3% of the budget to 8.1%. Spending on health insurance has more than doubled. Now, economists say the big culprit here is inflation. Healthcare costs have risen 3.5% over the past 20 years, while inflation overall has been at about 2%. But guys, higher healthcare costs are also part and parcel of what is to be expected when you have an aging population. Back over to you.
Hey, Elon, it's Michelle. Nice to see you in your red Christmas sweater. Hey, quick question. So the rising healthcare costs, you mentioned the rising cost of insurance, that increase to 8.1%. Is that all health insurance, or is that insurance premiums going up and then outlays as well because of high deductibles? I'm not sure if you know, but...
Yeah, it's unclear in the data. This number is from the BLS's Consumer Expenditure Survey. One thing that was surprising, though, is that the share of our wallets that we're spending on drug prices, that actually hasn't changed very much over the past 20 years, even though we've all talked a lot about higher drug prices. So in terms of how much of our own wallets we're spending on it, that hasn't changed too much.
Yeah, well, we did see consumer price data that showed actually some of the drug prices had gone down because of the increase in the number of generics that were being approved by the FDA. So that makes sense based on what you just said. Good to see you, Elon.
Good to see you, too.
Well, the National Retail Federation predicts that you, the consumer, are expected to spend 4% more this year than last year. So, did you? Well, joining us now is Edward Hertzman. He is Sourcing Journal founder and president, and Jerome Martis, Refinitiv Consumer Research Director. Edward and Jerome, welcome to you both. So what do we think, Edward? How are the trends? I'm sure you're getting data every day, if not every hour, from all those members. Is it looking like we are going to be spending more this holiday season?
Absolutely. This holiday season is looking to be our best in years. This past Saturday was the single strongest shopping day of the season, surpassing analysts' predictions of $34 billion. It looks like we're going to come in around $34.4 billion, which is about 10% higher than Black Friday. So all early indicators are showing that this holiday season has been quite strong.
Now, in your data, are you looking at? I mean, do you get Amazon data? I know they don't like to use trade groups and stuff like that. So is that what are the retailers that are doing that?
So the early winners are absolutely Amazon, Costco, Target, Walmart. Off-price sector has had the best in terms of transactions. Off-price sector continues to be very, very strong. I also like to look at Nike, Lulu. Some of the athletic brands continue to do well. But I don't want to be the Grinch. I do think that it's a little early to declare this holiday season a victory. I think that while these numbers are strong, what we have to look at, and it may take until we see the Q4 numbers, how promotional and how much did we have to discount to generate these sales? I think what we're going to see is that margin was really sacrificed in order to get the consumers into the store and drive this type of volume.
I agree. When you look at the beginning of the holiday season, Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you can see that the discounts were significantly higher then. About 74% of the merchandise at department stores were highly discounted.
Black
over
Friday
40%.
was a week. Let's be clear. I mean, it was the whole week.
Yes.
November.
Right.
Black Friday.
But then coming into this week, that number went down to 67%, so below 70%. And also the average discount was above 40% back then in the beginning. And now the average discount has come down to 28% coming into this week, according to
You got to punish the procrastinators. You know that because they're going to have to buy something.
Yes.
So when we rush into the stores tonight, we're not asking for discounts. Just you have something for tomorrow morning, right? So,
yes, absolutely.
Jerome, there's fewer Chinese traveling here for nationalistic or other reasons related to the trade war, fewer Middle East travelers spending on luxury goods. Does that show up in the numbers, or is it just not a big enough impact?
It's definitely showing. It showed up in the Macy's earnings numbers and also Tiffany's, because they both have two stores that are well known here in New York by being visited by tourists, and both of them said that they saw that traffic was down and spending was down by tourists.
Besides the top 4 or 5, the Costco, the Best Buy, Amazon, Walmart, are there any other surprise winners this season?
Absolutely. So one of our favorite ones is Lovesac. They have a sectional account.
The sectional?
Yes.
The sectional is red hot.
Right.
It's also like $5,000. What
yes,
is this?
Absolutely.
It's not Love Shack,
That's
which
what
is
I
a
thought.
song. It's
Yes.
Love Sack. Its stock's gotten crushed. They make those giant bean bags primarily, but they've rolled out this new thing called the Sactional, which somebody else recommended it yesterday.
Did you find out accidentally, or did you end up buying it?
on Power Lunch or
That's
the
right.
exchanges.
Ryan Angel was talking about, yes.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm like, what the heck? So I looked it up. I'm like, oh, it looks pretty nice.
And according to Refinitiv, they're going to have the strongest same-store sales this holiday season, over 20%, 27%, on top of a 32% comp last year. So with the way they differentiate themselves is that you can buy more models to make your couch even bigger at any point in time, or change the style instead of buying a brand new couch. They also have sustainable materials that resonate well with millennials.
Interesting.
And then Vince stores, their merchandise is resonating well with consumers. They're doing a massive expansion in China because their merchandise resonates well with the Chinese consumer. So that bodes well for them.
Vince, you said, does?
Vince.
Really?
Vince, yes. And also Lululemon, not only because of athleisure, but also because they have strong customer loyalty because of the community that they've built with free
You
events.
didn't mention any of the D2C kind of new brands like Away or any of those, no?
Yes, but when we look at more of the same-store sales, the highest ones, the ones that I mentioned have the highest same-store sales.
Well, Edward, we like the data. Looking like it's coming in strong.
I have asking for a friend. What about jewelry stores? Are they doing well? Selfishly?
Actually, the ones in the mall have have a lot of discounts. Over 50% of the jewelry will be on discount there.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this is good to know. I find jewelry so useless. I do. I know that's so funny.
But giving it.
Well, by the way,
Giving it
don't
to
wait too
women.
long. Don't wait. Be sure not to wait.
As a gift, it is not useful. It's very useful.
It's appreciated on the other end.
A lot of utility.
Listen to this man.
Edward, come back and tell us about all these big numbers we've been hearing. Thank you very much for joining us, Jerome. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Second love sack
Is there
reference.
utility, though, in jewelry? There's not much.
Yeah, so they have the strongest same-store sales in the entire holiday
Get
season.
over the utility, I'm being told. Coming up, when we return, hiring in America, the prospects for job growth in 2020. We're going to talk about it when Squawk returns right after this.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. You'll get interviews, original content, and behind-the-scenes access. Look for us on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. And subscribe to Squawk Pod today.
Ever since we downloaded the 30-day fitness app,
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year? I want a new phone. One with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12th 19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
So it's already December 24th. Well, at Boots, this Christmas, there's better than half price on selected gifts. Save money on gifts like Emporio Armani Diamonds He, 75ml, was £63, now only £29.99, and other selected products. Get on it today at the What to Buy Your Bestie for the Leasty boutique at your nearest Boots in London White City Shopping Centre. So gift like you get them before it ends 24th of December at selected stores and boots.com.
As we wave goodbye to the 2010s, TuneIn is remembering some of the decade's biggest news stories.
In 2011, the Arab Spring sparks anti-government protests across the Middle East and Northern Africa. In 2016, the United Kingdom votes to leave the European Union, forcing the ongoing Brexit crisis. And in 2019, Hong Kong erupts in 6 months of pro-democracy protest against mainland China.
Search news on TuneIn to be there when the next big story breaks.
On the goal line, scores! It takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
The move, and a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Let's talk about jobs in America, shall we? Kate Rogers joining us to look at the hiring trends for the new year.
A hot economy led to a tight job market in 2019 with education and health services, leisure and hospitality, and professional and business services leading the pack when it comes to job gains. Here are 3 predictions for the labor market in 2020. First, workers remain in high demand. 2019 was truly an employees market as companies across sectors named finding and keeping talent a top challenge. Expect the trend to continue next year as unemployment remains historically low. Baby boomers continue to age out of the workforce, leaving an even smaller pool for employers. Second, incentives and training continue. Upskilling or training workers already employed by a company is a move many employers are making as the supply of available talent remains low. Training programs, along with incentives like bonuses and more robust benefit offerings, will be key in attracting and retaining workers. Third, tech continues to change the game. From manufacturing to retail, technology is becoming an increasingly important part of the equation for workers. Look out for technological advances continuing to shape where and how employees do their jobs.
And when we come back right here on Squawk Box, Boeing's next chapter, the embattled aerospace giant, getting a new CEO, but when will it get the 737 MAX back in the air? That debate and so much more on this special edition of Squawk Box on Christmas Eve. We're back in a moment.
Selling on Poshmark is crazy simple. All you have to do is post a picture.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade. The 2010s saw yet another revolution in the way we listen to music. With music fans giving up CDs and digital downloads for streaming services and internet radio like TuneIn. At the same time, vinyl sales continue to rise to levels not seen since the format's original decline. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
What better way to celebrate the holidays than with a subscription to TuneIn Premium? With a bottomless library of the world's best audio, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg is out of a job, capping off a year of difficulty for the leadership at that aerospace giant. Chairman Dave Calhoun will take the helm. Here's what he told us when he joined Squawk Box early last month.
My appointment of chairman was very much about division of duty, and that experience I brought from my aviation days, and what I think is the significant overhauls that have to go on inside our company to increase visibility on the subject of safety straight up to the board and right down to the bottom of the organization, and create more independence in the functions that represent safety.
Okay, we're now joined by Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, Senior Associate Dean for Leadership Studies at the Yale School of Management. Carlos Watson's also here, Ozzy co-founder and CEO, and CNBC contributor Michelle Crusoe-Cabrera is at the table. Tom Farley is here. Everybody's here.
Good morning.
Jeff, though, you have been... I think that you were a backer for a long time of Dennis Muhlenberg, no?
No, what I wasn't was not a finger pointer that there's a demon. I don't believe that there has necessarily been any deception, any fraud here, and that's what I thought. There was a rush to always find a bad guy. Sometimes there are really unfortunate circumstances that happen, and it was either by bad calls or by bad technology, but not because of bad actors.
Okay,
and
so
I don't think there's a bad actor
Okay,
here.
so look forward, though, for just a second here on Calhoun. Is he the right guy? And the reason I ask the question is there's clearly, he's got the experience. He's in there sort of, but sort of not, which is a good, cuts both ways. But then he's in there in that he was on the air just a month ago, clearly blessing the plan as it was.
I think he, too, was taking the same position. There aren't any demons here, and was supportive of Dennis Muhlenberg. When we take a look at what's going wrong here, it's so odd on a holiday season to see somebody shot at sunset. We don't usually see in a non...
This is usually when you shoot, though, right?
Well, if there's a catastrophic situation. Right. But here, this is obviously the catastrophe was last year, and this is unfolding in the midst of repair. To have this happen so suddenly right now, where there's not a character issue is surprising. However, it is a cumulative weight of all these things. You look at those problems that are there, the FAA regulatory issues, the air carriers, of course, the symbolic and genuine problem they had, of course, with the Starliner spacecraft, again, of all things.
Well, that was
software.
it, right? I mean, that was probably the one thing that just like, this is enough.
Well, that, and I think United making a technology, equipment decision with Brand X and stuff like that. I think there were some catalysts out there, but Calhoun is the guy to address all these things. However, what we've talked about yesterday on all this, as if it's only Calhoun. Calhoun's resume is so unbelievable. You can't imagine Hollywood could have crafted somebody who's been a CEO, who's run a 60,000 person, aviation manufacturing company and stuff. However, the CFO is fantastic. This guy, Greg Smith, he's a decade younger. He's all dressed up, ready to go, and he's the culture carrier on the inside, whereas Calhoun can speak to regulators.
How long do you think it takes Calhoun to actually turn things around? Because right now, it feels like there's a lot of stasis, a lot of stagnation. Production's not moving. Some people down the chain are not producing anymore.
Well, that's a very good question. There's a little gap just in what we heard yesterday and what actually has happened. We were told yesterday that Greg Smith's the interim, that Calhoun's unwinding things at Blackstone. In fact, Calhoun, late afternoon yesterday, was already going off to air carriers and the FAA. So I think he's hitting the ground running, not to use aviation technology terms here. But he's actually taken off, hit the runway, I guess. And I think Calhoun's making a big difference. Larry Kellner, the former head of Continental Airlines, who is the head of their audit committee, is also reaching out to air carriers who are pretty unhappy right now. So I think those are some fantastic moves. So I think they're making a big difference soon. A lot of the problem here is a communications issue, and I think that's what they're addressing. And
Can I ask? I want to go back in the past and talk about communications, because you were on this network. I was watching from home, and you defended Dennis Muhlenberg, and you said they're doing a great job of communications since the accident. Since the accident, you said since the accidents, the tragic accidents, they have done a good job. My question for you: I'm not questioning the integrity of Dennis Muhlenberg. This is a tragic episode. I think he's a person with great integrity. Do you feel hoodwinked in that the communications, with the benefit of hindsight, were wrong?
As I told on this very set and told Dennis Muhlenberg several times to his face, he was getting a B minus on communications. That's not a failing grade that some wanted to hang him over.
What is that grade now? Because I think it's a D minus.
A D minus.
Or an F. When you box in the regulator,
it wasn't a good move.
And you're wrong multiple times about the dates that your most exciting product comes back online.
4 times we missed those dates, and that's a big issue.
Is that a B minus?
That's a big credibility. It's not a good grade. That's a big credibility hit. And whether or not there was a naivete or whatever, believing that they're going to make these deadlines, but to get in front of your regulators, in the world of finance is not a great move.
Well, by the way, the 2 regulators, Dixon and the guy that runs the NTSB, they're both not only pilots, they were 737 pilots. And if you know pilots, they're in charge. And now you got a guy coming in who's basically telling 2 pilots, here's what we're going to do. Not only are they regulators, which is their job to tell him what they're going to do, but they're also pilots. And so I imagine they were doubly ticked off.
You also have these 9 international authorities, the Joint Authorities Technology Review Board, and some of those countries don't like us a lot, like China and others, not making it easy. So all the more you don't want to get in front of those guys, because the FAA should be our ambassador to that group. You don't want to alienate them. We had a whistleblower that I believe was probably, I don't know if a faux whistleblower, but certainly a misleading one. This guy, Faulkner, I think was his name, a test pilot that created some noise, and that surprised the FAA too, because the Justice Department knew all about it, and the Justice Department was examining the FAA, so Boeing couldn't tell the FAA because they're both being investigated at the same time, and that sort of further alienated this guy Steve Dixon, the FAA.
Job one for this guy now is to reset expectations, communicate in a more effective way, and I don't want to say timid, but with a much better tactile sense than what we saw with Muhlenberg before, right? I mean, he's been on the phone, from what we understand, for 48 hours.
Muhlenberg was continually chasing the headlines, to your point, too, whereas Calhoun is out in front of them. He knows how to frame the issues very well. I think he's charismatic that way.
I know him a little bit personally. I mean, he's on the board of Virginia Tech, so I kind of know him through. He's just a nice guy. He's a great communicator. He's a jeans, no tie. He's a salt of the earth dude. He's the polar opposite of Muhlenberg's. I don't know Muhlenberg personally, but the impression of just super stiff, super formal. Calhoun's like, hey, let's go have a beer maybe and talk about this and work it out.
I think that's right.
But here it can't just be communications if you've missed dates 4 times now. I mean, there's fundamentally something nuts and bolts that's not going well if you're missing critical dates that lots of people are relying on.
Well, when you're in a business, you're so right. This is a company which stands for engineering and precision. And again, to have what went wrong, as we know from our own, Morgan Brennan, is that the liftoff, the launch, and the landing went perfectly. Technology worked perfectly. What went wrong? The stupid timer was set 11 hours off on a $4.5 billion
But the details matter.
Yeah, exactly.
The details matter, and this is a business of details. And clearly, they've missed the details. Well, and beyond the details, the question I have is: if you're David Calhoun, can you walk in to Gary Kelly's at Southwest or American and somehow change? All of a sudden, you have a different level of credibility than Dennis Muhlenberg. And as much as I hope that that's the case, I don't know.
Larry Kellner can do that, the former CEO of Continental Airlines, and that's what he is doing as the new chairman. Right. That's, again, we haven't been talking about that. Larry Kellner will run cover that way, and he had a very good tour of duty at Continental. Though we also can see that what Calhoun can do is to talk to the 900 subcontractors on this plane, 900 of them. Yeah. And we just see in today's headlines, there's a big ripple effect on them.
There's going to be people who lose their jobs because of this.
Already have been.
But nobody's asked the question, do we need this plane? Is this a plane that needs to be built? There's other 737s.
Brian, the issue in my mind that you're also raising too is President Trump, who got on the phone on Monday with Muhlenberg and who's going to look at the possible job loss and might have a different perspective and might weigh in on this. How significant do you think President Trump's involvement will be going forward, given that there could be job loss here?
I think they're very anxious about that. As you remember, he called in right in the beginning.
Right, he asked him to take it out of the air.
And he was asking an important question as to whether or not, the cockpit is over-programmed, and people were treating him like he was the village idiot. It turns out it was a good question.
Jeff, thank you very much. And Carlos, thanks for spending the hour with us.
Good
Merry
to be
Christmas.
with you guys.
Safe travels.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
So big thanks to Carlos Watts of Aussie.com. We'll maybe see you at Aussie Fest. Not that kind of Aussie Fest.
You know what? Don't be like Andrew Ross Sorkin and afraid to come. It's a lot of fun.
I'm not afraid.
You know what it is? He's paranoid.
I'm not afraid.
Sorry, Black Sabbath. That's an Aussie. No one got
that. You know.
Did you get that? I didn't get it. And I used to listen to him.
It's a Black Sabbath.
We got to roll.
Coming up. I feel like such a failure. Big tech stocks have had a huge 2019. Check out these returns. You might have heard about Apple. It's up 80%. Facebook up 60%. Even amid controversies, the top analysts will tell us what you need to do if you own the FANG stocks. Buy more, sell them. We'll talk about it. Stick around.
Far wing elevates. Triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man Fleet for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right block.
NBA today to start listening.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone. the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
It's the day before Christmas. Joe and Becky are gone, but Andrew and Sully are here to push on. And they're not alone, not by any degree. We brought in Tom Farley and our friend MCC. It's been a bad year for Boeing, the stock price in question. Will the new CEO cause a volatile session? The tickers are moving, and we'll summarize just how the markets keep hitting new highs. Trade talks advancing, but will Trump reveal when China will sign a Phase 1 trade deal? Kick back and relax. The year's almost done. Squawk Box begins in 3, 2, 1.
On Christmas Eve right here on CNBC. We are live this morning at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. Manager Ross Sorkin, along with Brian Sullivan, who's hanging out with us. Tom Farley's here. Michelle Caruso-Cabrera is here. Joe and Becky are off today, but we are talking holidays, all things holidays, and the markets. As today, we're saying today is the Santa Claus rally begins today. Is that the official period?
First day.
First day.
Last 5 days of the year.
Last 5 days of the year. Take a look at U.S. equity futures.
It's been going on for a year.
They're playing along with us right now. The Dow looks like it would open up about 26.5 points higher. S&P 500 looking to open about 2 points higher. And the NASDAQ looking to open about 6 points higher right now. Also, we should say a reminder, today's trading day is shortened, so everybody can get to Christmas and their Christmas Eve planning. The stock market closes at 1 p.m. Eastern time today. The bond market closes at 2 p.m.
All right, new this morning, BMW says it is being investigated by the SEC following a report of a probe into the company's sales practices. At issue is whether BMW engaged in what's called sales punching, or boosting sales figures by having dealers register cars as sold when in reality the vehicles are still sitting on the lot. BMW says it is fully cooperating with the investigation. Remember, Fiat Chrysler settled an SEC case in September for $40 million after being accused of a similar sales exaggeration scheme.
Is this like stuff in the channel like they used to do in the supermarket?
Yeah, but I do wonder, I imagine the car has to be sold to somebody. Maybe they just haven't driven it home yet.
Yeah, there's not a lot of gray area there. They've either sold the car or they have not sold the car. So that should be an easy investigation. It's changed title or it has not.
You said it's, why is the car still sitting there? I don't know. Whose car is that? I don't know.
Meantime, one of Warren Buffett's top lieutenants is going to go run Geico. Todd Combs will take over as Geico CEO on January 1st. Combs succeeds Bill Roberts, who will become Geico's vice chairman and retire in December of next year. Combs, of course, hired by Berkshire back in 2010 to help Buffett manage the company's massive investment portfolio, along with Ted Weschler. As CEO of Geico, Combs expected to report to Ajit Jain, who oversees all of Berkshire's insurance businesses, but a lot of speculation about this is a test of sorts to see whether Todd will ultimately take over the entire company as CEO in the future, both with the investing experience and now operational experience.
Is this the greatest ascension question of the decade?
The great succession story of business. Meantime, it has been a turbulent year for the FANG stocks, but all of them are ending the year up around 20%, with Facebook up now over 50% year to date. Joining us right now for a roundup of the year in tech, and more importantly, a look ahead for what's in store in these stocks. Victor Anthony's here, Managing Director for Internet at Aegis Capital. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, did you call this right? I mean, did we know that Facebook was going to be up 50% this year?
I called it last year.
You called it last year?
Okay, I did. I made it one of my top picks for 2019.
So what's it going to be for next year?
I think there's more upside.
How much
data
more
I'm looking
upside?
at, at least another 30% upside. From
another 30%?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're not worried about antitrust tension ramping up, maybe even more noise about splitting off the messaging apps or not allowing the messaging apps to communicate with one another?
Yeah, so I published my 12 predictions for 2020. And the first one was really just the antitrust regulatory backdrop, which I think will probably escalate as we head into the election cycle, deeper into the election cycle, but I think it eases off after that. As far as antitrust...
Eases off if under a Trump administration, or eases off under an Elizabeth Warren administration?
Irrespective, I think, of who wins, which...
Irrespective.
So you think Elizabeth Warren's a paper tiger on antitrust enforcement?
I think a lot of this is just really posturing into the election. That's my own personal belief. As far as antitrust, though, as far as Facebook and Google, I just don't see the rationale that they have for breaking up those two companies. If you look at YouTube, you look at Instagram, those two assets are so heavily intertwined into the core parents' operations, whether it be technology...
Regulators aren't or politicians aren't necessarily rational, right? You don't see a rationale, but they may absolutely see a political rationale, right?
In an election cycle, yes. So you have this irrationality. When that pressure is off, I think the rational thoughts come back into play. I do see a case for Amazon.
Will the stock trade up and down based on the degree to which Elizabeth Warren appears to be rising or falling in the polls, since she seems to be one of the most active when it comes to talking about what's going to happen?
Correct. So you'll see some headline risk tied to that. You may see some pressure on the multiple. So multiples may not expand as fast as we probably think they should be because of this overall regulatory issue and antitrust issue. I was going to say that I do think there's a case for Amazon, though.
Break up?
Yeah, I mean, as far as AWS, I think it's a fairly distinct business.
But you're breaking that up on the industrial logic of breaking it up, not on a regulatory issue. Or you say you're trying to get ahead of the regulatory issue.
Right. I doubt Bezos wants to break it up, but I just think there's a case that you could make.
You think it might be forced to break up?
Eventually, longer term,
because
I think there may be some pressure there.
People complain AWS might know what their competitors are doing because so many companies...
This is the cloud service business of
Amazon,
run on Amazon
servers. So how do you know if you're looking at
or it subsidizes the marketplace?
Yeah, that's been a longer term concern for AWS since the early days of it. But it's a distinct business, different growth profile from the core business, different margin profile, different cash flow characteristics. It's a different business. So
what about Google? You don't see a rationale for Google? I mean, increasingly, when I use Google for search, I'm never leaving Google.
But what do you break it up exactly?
More services, flights or hotels or prices of wine or anything. It's all now in the Google box. Isn't there a rationale there? If I'm a competitor and they're saying they're using their monopoly position in search to move into these other businesses in an anti-competitive way.
Yeah, but the thing you have to look at is that Google is a massive ecosystem. And so when you disrupt ecosystems, you disrupt what the user experience. And so if you disrupt that, then I think...
Consumers will be harmed. There'll be a lot of...
Consumers will be harmed and everything else.
Interestingly, I know you're saying, how do I roast turkey? You used to click a link. Now the main result is in the box. You're never leaving Google.com.
But look, for all of that...
And it is convenient.
You have an Apple device... I imagine you're like me. You're living on an Apple device in a Google world, which is sort of an interesting phenomenon that you're not on an Android if you're such a Google lover. Why is that?
If I'm such a Google lover.
Meaning if you think if everyone's living in this Google world.
My desktop and mobile worlds are
No, but his
very
point is, you
different.
said that you get, once you do a search on Google, you don't end up believing it because they provide everything already on the screen, right?
So you're living inside this Google world, but you're on an app. It's not, I mean, I get the monopoly.
But I'm still using Google search on my iPhone. I'm still stuck on your original comment that you and I are a lot alike. That's how you open that. I mean, we have 3 kids. We live in the city.
We are alike.
Yeah.
In very many ways.
By the way, try
He's better looking, though, so it's a problem.
We both dress for the holidays.
Is there a best bet on tech stocks do you cover, Victor, for 2020?
Yes, so on the large cap side, I'm actually going to go with Facebook next year, as well as Amazon, irrespective of what we just talked about. I think those 2 stocks would outperform quite significantly. On the mid cap side, though, there are some stocks that underperformed this year that I think will outperform quite significantly.
Like what? Give us some names.
One is ComScore, which I cover. Another one is Meet Group, which is an online dating app.
What is it called?
The Meet Group. The
Meet.
The ticker is
MEET,
MEET.
I hope.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're right.
The other one could do well.
For a certain, subset of the population. Yeah.
And the third was Angie Home Services, which
really Angie's list.
They were actually disrupted by Google this year. That was an unforeseen event, and the stock.
The new algorithm Google put through blew out their search results.
Exactly.
Right?
So why are you so convinced it comes back?
Well, number one, they are diversifying away from Google as far as the traffic source, and so that's working. And also, they're shifting the business to more of a pre-price, fixed-price business.
Okay, so hang on. I'm handing you $10,000 for Christmas right now.
Last year.
Yeah, I give you $10,000. You can only do one thing with it. What do you do?
I'll place my bets on Facebook. The data I'm looking at right now is so strong from a user perspective. The advertising checks are so strong that I think this Facebook just continues to outperform operationally as well as a stock.
You got it right last year. Hope you get it right this year, next year. All right, we'll see you next year. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks
Good to see you. Nice to meet your kids here in the studio.
That was fun.
Thanks, guys.
All right, coming up, we just talked about tech. We're going to switch gears, talk about finance. Should you buy the bank stocks? Interest rates, they're back on the rise. The Fed's out there. Should you buy the financials in 2020? Always trying to help you make
Swift here.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Witch Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
As we wave goodbye to the 2010s, TuneIn is remembering some of the decade's biggest news stories.
In 2011, the Arab Spring sparks anti-government protests across the Middle East and Northern Africa. In 2016, the United Kingdom votes to leave the European Union, forcing the ongoing Brexit crisis. And in 2019, Hong Kong erupts in 6 months of pro-democracy protest against mainland China.
Search news on TuneIn to be there when the next big story breaks.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, the actor Peter Dinklage, who thinks some Game of Thrones fans need to just chill.
Maybe wait till the season finale, the series finale, before you get that tattoo or name your golden retriever Daenerys. I can't help you. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, plunges into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
The Better Network is now on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search the Better Network. That's the BETR network. And then let us get you better prepared to better enjoy the day in sports. The NFL, college football, basketball, hockey, baseball. Sharpen your edge. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Search the Better Network. That's BETR.
Take a look at the futures right now ahead of Christmas Eve in this shortened trading session this morning. Dow off, or I should say up rather, about 25 points, and Nasdaq looking to open about 8 points higher as well. Look at the S&P 500 up about 2 points right now. The financial sector trading almost exactly in line with the broader market, with both up now 29% this year. Joining us now to talk about what to expect from banks in the new year and what challenges they may face, John Curran. He is the Senior Investment Manager at Aberdeen Standard Investments. Which bank would you buy? If we just had this conversation on the internet and tech. If I gave you $10,000 this morning, what would you buy for 2020 in the banking world?
Sure, that's a great question. I think it's been a great year for the banks. Their structural soundness and their benign backdrop really should hold them in good stead for 2020. I think J.P. Morgan, from the bondholder perspective, is really the best bank out there.
From the bondholder perspective, not an equities perspective.
That's right. It's a great question for an equity holder, but the important point for bondholders is we look at those banks that have diversified businesses, strong balance sheets, and durable deposit franchises and terrific asset quality.
And what kind of yield am I going to get if I am a J.P. Morgan bondholder?
You'll get a yield. Excuse me. You'll get a yield that'll carry your coupon, and you'll get some compression too. J.P. Morgan is the sleep easy at night bank story for 2020.
But you don't like the equity. I'm back to Andrew's original question.
Well, it's a great question for my equity counterparts. I think certainly the top line of banks will be impacted by lower rates right now. But we like if you look at J.P. Morgan's third quarter revenues, $29.3 billion, record revenues. The banks that have levers to mitigate against flattening margins are the banks that are going to, I think, really thrive in a low interest rate environment.
Hey, John, one bank that's been in the news and the headlines pretty much throughout 2019, and not necessarily in a good way, has been Wells Fargo. They are trying to turn the page. Do they in 2020, and do you give them your money?
I think it's a great question. So Wells Fargo still has some wood to chop. They're not out of the woods yet. I think the installation of Charlie Scharf as their CEO has been a good step. They're still subject to the Fed asset cap, so I think they have a ways to go, and costs are an issue, increasingly a focus for Wells Fargo. But their asset quality is pretty good. Ultimately, rates won't make or break a bank, but poor underwriting will. But Wells Fargo does have some wood to chop.
What?
I was just sitting here thinking while John was talking about J.P. Morgan, just how well managed that company is. And then you asked a question about Charlie Scharf, one of the diaspora. There's just so many great managers that come out of J.P. Morgan that run banks, that run fintech companies. John, do you think that's J.P. Morgan's secret sauce?
I really do. I think no one's ever going to make money betting against J.P. Morgan. It's a terrific American institution. It's got a deep management bench, and it's got proven leadership that has really fanned out across the financial spectrum and gone on to do great things. I think it's really a terrific institution.
The other bank with a lot of continuity, great management, is Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Brian Moynihan, I don't know how long he's been there, but many years since the financial crisis. What are your thoughts on Bank of America?
I think that's an absolutely terrific point as well. I think Brian Moynihan's done a fantastic job orchestrating all the change at Bank of America. The bank has come a long way from the throes of the credit crisis. They could have filled a football stadium with all the servicers that were working out soured mortgage loans, and right now losses are at just absolutely minuscule levels, 34 basis points at their third quarter for portfolio-wide losses, and their capital levels are great while they're returning money to patient shareholders. So really a good story for bondholders and shareholders alike at Bank of America.
John, final question for you. Consolidation in 2020, do you think it's likely? Is it possible? Will regulators allow it, and what should we look for?
Sure. Another great question. And we saw We saw SunTrust and BB&T come together to form Truist. I think, if anything, we'll see some maybe some more regional bank consolidation. But for the larger banks with their large deposit footprints, I think maybe more tuck-in acquisitions on the margin in areas where they want to seek to further penetrate.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. We wish you a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, John.
Merry Christmas to you, too. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
All right, coming up, it has been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year for SoftBank's Masayoshi Son. The investment bank and firm taking a big hit on the meltdown of the WeWork IPO. We're going to talk about the fallout and the challenges that one of the world's biggest investment funds faces in the new year. That is next.
Do your countertops look like this?
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year?
I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
19p? What will that get you at Christmas? 5 minutes to Panto, a very unpopular Secret Santa. This week at Tesco, you can get sprouts, carrots, or parsnips from just 19p. Our festive 3. That should get you on the nice list. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Selected stores excludes Express, ends 26th of December.
The Grand DFS sale featuring Wallace.
Hello?
And Gromit.
Well, say hello, lad.
Every sofa is made to order.
Buy a speedy Sofa-matic machine.
By hand.
Oh, suit yourself.
So you can have your sofa exactly how you want it.
Made of cheese?
Not that exactly.
Oh, probably a good thing, eh, Gromit? It'd be gone in a jiffy.
The Grand DFS sale is now on. Doors open from 9 a.m. Boxing Day.
How about a cushion made of cheese? Or a footstool?
Be honest, how much attention are you really paying to this advert? 25%? Maybe 30% if you're sitting in traffic and the kids have stopped arguing? What about 0%? Well, now's the time to give 0% attention, because for a limited time only, the entire Mini range is available with 0% APR. All you need to decide is which Mini is perfect for you. Good to know we've now got 100% of your attention. Search 0% Mini to find out more. Who's in? Minimum 25% deposit on 24-month select agreements for new models registered by 31st of December 2019 at participating retailers, subject to availability. Excludes Mini Electric. UK residents aged 18 plus. Guarantees may be required. Mileage and other conditions apply if you return the vehicle. T's and C's apply. Mini UK, a trading name of BMW UK Limited, is a credit broker, not a lender.
TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2018, when Alabama's Tua Tagovailoa throws the game-winning touchdown in the national championship against Georgia.
Loads up, looks long, throws, end zone, touchdown! Alabama! Devontae Smith! Touchdown, Alabama! And the Crimson Tide has once again ascended to the top of the college football.
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history.
Christmas, baby, should it treat me nice?
Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. The futures right now are in the green on this Christmas Eve. Let's show you where things stand and what is ahead. We still have close to about an hour before the market opens. Dow looks like it would open up about 26 points higher. S&P 500 up about 2 points. And the NASDAQ there opening up about 6.5 points higher. SoftBank reportedly hitting a wall and securing bailout financing for WeWork from the 3 largest banks in Japan. Here's Deidre Bosa with a look at the biggest challenges that SoftBank faces in the new year.
This past year was a wild ride for SoftBank and its vision fund portfolio companies. So here's what to watch from the company's CEO, Masayoshi Son, and his team in 2020. First, it could take longer to raise Vision Fund 2. After high-profile flops like Uber and WeWork, SoftBank may struggle to get outside investors to sign on and announce a major close. SoftBank could also up its own investment in the fund or face a fund that is smaller than the targeted $108 billion. Second, we could see SoftBank push more collaboration and even consolidation among Vision Fund portfolio companies. Masa-san has said that the Vision Fund is an ecosystem where mutually beneficial relationships are fostered. With a greater drive toward profitability, that goal could take on greater urgency. Third, the Vision Fund headaches aren't over yet. Masa-san has warned that there could be WeWork-like problems surfacing in other portfolio companies. Next year, trouble could brew in investments, particularly in China and India.
Masa-san, big story of the year. Does he make it next year? What do you think? Does all come? It's either all going to work out brilliantly.
Make it though. What do you mean by make it? Does he survive at the head of his own company?
No. I
think there's a lot more
digging. Do you raise a second fund?
How can you raise a second fund when your first fund isn't?
Well, the question is, is this fund a failure? Look, if Oyo works, Oyo is the Indian hotel company. If that works, that could actually make it all. All these problems can go away. It's actually a very interesting.
I mean, that is the rationale of private equity, right? You invest in 13 companies, and you only need one to be a hit. But the lack of due diligence on WeWork in so many ways, I gotta think, tarnishes him to some degree. No, understatement of the year.
If you're the big buyer of everything, and you're sort of buying and almost bidding against yourself, you can make asset prices go up just by being the buyer of the asset. You know what I mean? If I buy that coffee mug from $5 and I come back an hour later and say I'll give you $10, you just doubled your money, but no one else is bidding.
That's by and large what happened at WeWork. SoftBank was just investing in increasingly higher rounds.
Correct. Increasing the valuation of their fund because they were buying it.
But also happening just at the venture capital level, talking to people over and over again in Silicon Valley saying, I tried to invest in this company, and then WeWork comes in and they want to give them double what they were asking for. I mean, he upended all the valuations out there in a way that a lot of people found very disturbing and couldn't wait till they thought he was inevitably gone.
He is a risk taker extraordinaire historically, but this Vision Fund 1 is inherently risky. If you recall, he took that money from the Saudis as preferred stock and has to pay them back a coupon before Vision Fund investors make money. So that to me is the biggest question. Will Vision Fund 1 return a positive return after those preferred payments?
We will see. Meantime, in the spirit of giving, I have a column in today's New York Times about charity, and I wanted to talk about charity. I actually gave a sort of adapted version of this column as a speech at the UJA Wall Street dinner a couple weeks ago. We're talking about tzedakah, which is a Hebrew word that traditionally today means charity. But in fact, the real definition of it, many, many, many years ago, was actually something much more profound. It was about righteousness, and it was about justice. And the reason I mention this is so many people are so generous during this season and give so much money away to food banks and all sorts of other great and needing organizations. And by the way, the UJA gives a lot of money to food banks. But one of the things that I went to look at, and I didn't realize this, was who actually goes to food banks today, who goes to homeless shelters. 43% of working Americans, people with full-time jobs, end up spending time at food banks. 25% of the people in homeless shelters are full-time employees who are actually working. And so one of the things I'm hoping that we can think about when we think about giving is to actually think about what it means to have a living wage in America today. In New York City today, if you make less than $32,402 is the poverty level. That's the threshold for poverty. So you'll be going, if you're making basically less than $18 an hour in New York, which is higher than the minimum wage in this state and much higher than the minimum wage across the country, you're eligible to go to those food banks. So if you're giving money to charity, as fabulous as that is, if you're a business leader, or frankly, if you're an employee and you have any influence in your company, I would argue to you the real charity is trying to figure out how to change that equation. So that's my column for the day, and I hope if you have a chance to read it, you go do that.
We will.
Happy holidays.
All right, coming up, a CEO shakeup at Boeing. You might have heard about this. The stock getting a boost. We're going to talk about the challenges that David Calhoun will face when he takes the helm in the new year. As we head to break, let's take a look at U.S. equity futures. They are higher. Every day we go up, Tom, is what? A record high. That's what happens when you're at a record high, right, Michelle?
Merry Christmas.
10 plus 1's 11. And we're back after this.
When your back hurts, you can't...
Just because you travel doesn't mean you can't keep your routine. The more obstacles travel puts between us and our well-being, the more we strive to move well. At Westin Hotels and Resorts, we're focused on empowering your well-being. With our Westin Workout Fitness Studio with TRX equipment, you can run like a local as you do in Watford. Don't leave your well-being behind. We give you the choice to get up or to rise. Search Westin online to find out more. Westin, let's rise.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can feel your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We hunt in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Let's take a look at some stocks to watch this morning on Christmas Eve. We're watching shares of industrial component maker Wesco and communications product company. Is it Annixter? I never pronounced that properly. As a takeover battle is developing. Late yesterday, Annixter agreed to a Sweden takeover deal from private equity firm Clayton, Dubilier and Rice. $86 per share, plus a so-called contingent value right worth $2.50 per share this morning. Wesco announcing it was offering $90 per share for the company. And then take a look at shares of Advanced Micro Devices. They are higher this morning. RBC Capital Markets raising its price target on the chipmaker stock to $53 a share from $50 after raising full-year earnings estimates. RBC saying it's seeing solid channel checks for AMD's gaming and data center businesses.
All right, let's get a quick market check on the 5th to last day of trading of the decade. Let's bring in Rick Santelli, who's at the CME. First and foremost, Rick, Merry Christmas, my friend. I wish you were here or I was there, but I'm sending it digitally. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you and your family, Sully.
Thank you very much.
It's wild where interest rates are, and many didn't. I've heard you in the last couple of days say that not many picked the 10-year note to be under 2%. But maybe the bigger question is, are we going to be lower for longer, even as debt and deficits continue to increase? It's going to be very interesting for next year, especially considering we're going to get some trade back into the equation, or at least more capital spending potentially. Or did you think we'd close under 2% this year, Sully?
No. Honestly, I thought
knew
we'd be
it'd
at
be
3%
close, but I
by
thought
now.
we'd be above.
I was, but I mean, I was as wrong can be. I'll admit it.
And the biggest shock, I think, is that if you look around the globe and you see how much negative interest rates still remain, and you look at all the low interest rates in countries that are still positive, how close to zero they are, and then you look at their balance sheets, Japan 240% debt to GDP. But I do think you have to be really careful these last few days. We may have a Santa Claus rally after Christmas in stocks, but within markets, 195, viewers, 195 and 10s. It's like the Pac-Man, and it can't quite bite through. And if it does, I don't know that we're going to stay higher or above 2% for long. But I'd be very careful about a technical pop in rates, especially in thin markets going into year end, Sully.
Rick, you implying that could be a risk to the equity market if we see that move, or just, technically you're watching that level?
Yeah, no, I think the equity markets are quite comfortable with rates where they are, and I think it would take a lot more to the upside, maybe a push towards 2.5%. That would maybe at least capture stocks' attention. But let's not forget that some of the best rallies that we've had over the last several years, especially the one that occurred 2017, those rallies were accompanied by higher rates, so the pairing is good. But yes, I think that if all of a sudden we just started to run up, stocks would pay attention, but not towards the final few sessions of the year.
All right, Rick, thank you very much for that. And Rick, have a great day tomorrow. Merry Christmas. We'll see you soon. All right, buddy.
And Boeing. Hey, Rick. Merry Christmas. I'm sorry, but we cut him off, but I wasn't trying to, Rick. I love you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Hope to see you very, very soon. Meantime, we want to talk about a gift. I don't want to say it's a gift that keeps on giving because that sounds so terrible, especially given what's happening here. Boeing closing out the gift that keeps on giving in terms of news, but it's not a good look. It's not a good look. Boeing closing out the year with a CEO shakeup. Dennis Muhlenberg is out. Dave Calhoun will be taking over in the new year as the company tries to restore confidence after a rocky 2019. And joining us right now to talk about is Anthony Roman, president of Roman & Associates and a licensed commercial pilot. Good morning to you, Anthony. The question of the morning, does putting David Calhoun in the pilot seat in this case, if you will, restore credibility for you?
I think it's a terrific move. He has all of the credentials to pull this together. In addition to that, he has the people skills to work with a very competent FAA administrator, Dixon. Dixon is not someone to be messing around with, so to speak. He was an F-15 fighter pilot, Air Force Academy graduate, vice president of flight operations for Delta. This man knows his airplanes, and in particular, knows the Boeing. He's flown both the Airbus and just about every model Boeing that Delta has. So I think it's a great marriage. I think he's going to put Boeing back on his feet, and he has the technical and management experience to put together the solutions to these terrible quality control issues that Boeing is suffering.
Anthony, I completely agree. This is a great American company. We should all want the best for it, and the board had no decision. They made a good choice. My question for you is, Larry Kellner, Dave Calhoun, that combination, are they going to be trusted by the pilots? Because there seems to have been a pretty significant fracturing of the relationship between Boeing and commercial pilots in the U.S. and throughout the world.
Well, I think that fracturing was to be expected given what's happened. After the first Lion Air crash, Boeing convinced the FAA that there were no problems with the MAX, when in fact they had knowledge that there was in fact some potential problems with the design. Not a big fan of taking an aircraft, an existing model, and changing its center of balance, and then overcoming those center of balance issues with computer coding. Not for an airliner. It's good for a fighter jet like the Raptor, the F-22, but not for a Boeing aircraft. So I think they can work together. I think they can help solve these problems. I think the pilots are going to have a lot of confidence.
Anthony, can I ask you, can you back up? So when you talk about shifting the center of gravity, does this plane just shouldn't be in the air and they should just give it up?
I didn't say it shouldn't be in the air. I think they've overcome some of those issues with computer programming. But being a pilot myself, I prefer that commercial aircraft that are what we call non-specialty aircraft. They don't have a specific edge of the envelope requirement to perform at very high levels of the envelope and the edges of the performance envelope of
and you think this one does,
like fighter
Anthony?
Planes do. I think this one's well within the envelope, but this center of gravity issue, I'm not a big fan of computer code overcoming that in airliners. I do think it can be made safe with the MCAS system. I think that they will overcome the coding problems, but coding in aircraft is a very complex affair. Hundreds of millions of lines.
I have a different question for you, Anthony. Long term, do you think that this is going to be the plane that will be the future of Boeing, or do you think this is going to be if this model, if you will sort of come and go very quickly, given what you're talking about here?
I think too much of an investment has been made for it to come and go very quickly. They're going to have to secure their margins from all of the investments and all of the losses that they've suffered. I do think that they will overcome these problems. It's a very fuel-efficient design. The Boeing 737 basic design is a very strong foundation, and I think it's going to become one of their most profitable and safest aircraft, frankly.
Wow. Anthony, appreciate your time and your perspective this morning. Thank you so very much. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Merry Christmas.
All right, well, coming up today marks the official start of what they call the Santa Claus rally period on Wall Street. That generally happens in the 5 final trading days of the year and the first 2 trading days of the new year. The S&P 500 has posted a 1.3% gain on average since 1950 during the Santa Claus rally period. The question is this: will it continue given the big run we've already had? We'll talk strategy next. And later on, the 3 big media calls out from JP Morgan. We're going to run through the predictions, maybe the names you need to watch. You're watching Squawk Box. Futures are higher. We're back right after this.
Do your countertops look like this?
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Spend Christmas Day listening to the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Featuring 5 big matchups on the holiday schedule. Unwrap the action starting at 12 Eastern when the Celtics take on the Raptors in Toronto, followed by the Bucks and the 76ers at 2:30. The holiday cheers continue with the Rockets and Warriors at 5 and the Clippers and Lakers at 8. And a showdown between the Pelicans and Nuggets at 10:30. 'Tis the season with the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
We're actually physical. No.
And is Santa there? Is that what we?
Yeah, that's the Santa tracker. So Santa right now is beginning his epic journey, right, Andrew? I mean, just, how many children, millions of children, billions of children? Just from one sleigh. And
one sleigh. It's
overworked.
amazing.
Or is there 9 reindeers? Because Rudolph's in the front?
That's a technology
reindeer are
disruptor for sure.
Ooh, that's a good question. How many reindeer?
9.
We know 9.
Donner, Blitzen, Jan,
We're going to get
Peter,
in trouble for not
Greg.
knowing this.
The holiday shortened trading session will soon get underway on Wall Street. Remember, we close at 1 p.m. today for stocks, 2 p.m. today for bonds. Let's get a check of the markets right now. Joining us is James Camp. He is Managing Director of Strategic Income at Eagle Asset Management. Hi, James. And here on set is Chris Harvey, Head of Equity Strategy at Wells Fargo Securities. I mean, this is the easiest interview of the day, Chris, because here's the question. S&P 500 is up, 30% this year? On pace for maybe its best year in 22 years? I mean, how much more money and upside Can this market really deliver?
I don't think much. And
you don't think much?
No, not much. You've beaten all expectations this year. You've beaten our expectations. You've beaten every single person that we've talked to. And the Santa Claus rally, I think you've already had it. And when you look into 2020, I think you have to lower expectations. So the VIX is 12, 13. Expectations have ratcheted up. The Fed is liquefying the balance sheet. And we think you're going to get a correction in the first half of next year and possibly the first couple months.
A technical correction, 10%, an actual correction?
We think 5 to 10%, upwards of 10%, yes.
You are the most bearish person I've heard in 2 days. Everyone else has come on this set for 6 hours. You're the only remotely bearish person.
I'm so sorry.
Is that right?
Yes, get out.
For 2 days. So thank you for bringing some sanity and reason, because things can go wrong. How does the election factor into your sobriety?
Very little. So we would look back to the Nixon era, we look back to the Clinton era, and really it's just noise. Whatever trend you have in place is the trend that continues. So we've seen the equity market march higher. That's what we've seen over the last couple of years. Last couple months. That's what we expect in the short term. But as we go forward, you have to lower your expectations. If you look, please.
But because of the Fed, what's going to be the catalyst that? The Fed looks like it's going to be easy for a while, right? That was what scared everybody a year ago today, and they've taken their foot off that pedal.
Let's roll the clock back 1 year ago. The wheels were falling off the cart.
Yep.
The world looked like it was going to come to an end.
Yep.
And now we're up well over 20% since that point in time. Now everything's fantastic. To your point, I'm one of the few people who have been bearish this year. So you usually don't get great opportunities when everything is good at this juncture. And what's the catalyst? We do think it's the Fed. The Fed is providing a lot more liquidity than they need to. And when that stops and when that decelerates, we think you're going to get a pullback.
James, you keep a close eye on the fixed income market. One of the risks that I have for 2020 is a potential for a sharp rise in interest rates. While not expected, just thinking about what that could do to markets. Is that something that's on your radar? What do you expect for rates in the year to come?
Yeah, I think we've seen the lows globally in interest rates, and I think, as Chris alluded to, the Fed policy mistake that was on the table last year has mercifully been put into the rearview mirror. But I think the upward bias on rates is here. I think we have a labor market that is nearing full employment. We have productivity gains that seem to be stalling in the face of a deceleration of capital expenditures. So the idea that there's going to be some upward pressure to core inflation, I think, is in the market. And I think we've put the lows in for the Treasury yield. We put the lows in globally, by the way. If we look around Germany and other places, we've bounced off the ridiculously negative yields that we had just 12 months ago. So signs do point to a modest increase in long-term rates for us.
What does that mean? Can you give us a number?
I'd say 2.25, 250 is a good entry point for a debt investor.
I'm confused. You mean you expect? Let me ask something much more basic. Dumb journalist. The 10-year yield in 6 months will be where, do you think? If you think rates are going
2.25 to 2.5, I think, is the number that we'll settle into.
Okay, and that would be a good entry point. You wait for that, and then as a bond investor, you get in?
Yeah, and I think one of the things we have to look back on 2019 is pretty much every asset class worked, and that include longer duration fixed income instruments. Now, right now, we can take a pause from our fixed income allocation, not give up a lot of yield because of the short-term rates being relatively high, and sort of let this thing resettle in terms of where long-term rates is. And that's our trade in the bond market.
They're putting $320 billion into the New York Fed in the overnight repo. I know it's early and it's so wonky, the repo market. It's the plumbing of Wall Street. It's so boring, but $160 billion on the last trading day of this year, $160 billion on the first trading day of next year. Remember that Stephen Mnuchin weekend where he said that? He's like, I've emailed all the bank CEOs and everything's fine. And everybody's like, why did you have to do that? You know, he sort of created almost a mini crisis. Why are they putting $320 billion in the repo market? That sounds like a lot of money. It sounds like something's going wrong that we need to know about, but nobody seems to be that worried about it.
Brian, you make an excellent point. In September, the Fed asked us to wish it away in terms of an imbalance of cash demanded and cash supplied. But as we continue to accelerate Federal Reserve involvement in the repo markets and, in fact, expand the balance sheet, which we view as a QE, the question has to be, is the Fed looking at a repo counterparty that concerns them? And if this is simply a mismatch, it's at best a bad look for the Fed. But if it's somebody saying, I don't want to loan to you overnight, a.k.a. what happened in 2008, that's a lot more concerning. We don't foresee that happening, but it bears watching because somebody may be showing up to the repo market that folks are balking at. That could be a hedge fund. It could be a bank that's teetering We view short-term markets very closely, and they often are precursors to what can be trouble in the financial system. So it bears watching in 2020 what happens with short-term funding.
Turn to the equity guy here on the set. As the equity guy, do you worry about this and what the overnight rate and the craziness that we've seen there and what the Fed's trying to do?
We don't worry so much about the overnight rate. We do look at it. We look to see if they're stressed. But what we worry about is the Fed is backstopping the repo market. That is putting risk on. It is the exact opposite of what we saw last year. Furthermore, that's going to cause dislocations. They're reducing the duration of the balance sheet, which is steepening the curve, which is good for the short term. But once they stop, you can see that curve flatten and risk off occur. So what we worry about, what our clients are starting to say is they're frustrated. They're saying, leave the capital markets, let them stand on their own. You don't need this kind of intervention anymore. Let's stop and let's start pricing things according to the fundamentals, according to what we see in the balance sheets and in the conference calls.
Chris, I can hear it in your voice that you think 2020 is not going to be a good year. But when I look at the target that you have out there, it's up 6%. It's pretty decent year.
That's right. So
what's going on? Is that like, is this the corporate view? Wells Fargo, is saying, hey, we have to be up 6%?
No,
mildly
because
bullish.
I hear it.
Bullish is the new bearish.
Maybe that's what it is.
No, we do think you're going to be up 6%, but by the end of the year, you're going to need a drink because there's going to be a lot of volatility. We think you're going to have a lot more spikes in volatility. We think you're going to get upwards of 10% or maybe more in the first part of this year.
Okay,
but
bad sharp ratio, but ultimately up at the end of the year.
And what you want to do is you don't want to be married to positions. You want to trade your positions, but ultimately we do end higher.
Okay.
Dating, no marriage. Chris, thank you.
You did get it at Match.com.
Or the Meet.
Tinder.
Or Meet.
MEET. Thank you very much. James, Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Coming up
Merry Christmas, guys.
in our final, what do we got, 10 minutes to go before the big holiday. 3 big media predictions. You do not want to miss these for the new year from JP Morgan. We're going to talk to the analyst who made the calls right after the break.
Close my eyes and I'm somewhere else, just like magic.
What was your favorite binge-worthy podcast of 2019? Here's one of ours.
Not so long ago, Stanford dropout turned CEO Elizabeth Holmes was a rising star in Silicon Valley.
On The Dropout, ABC News reporter Rebecca Jarvis tells the unbelievable true story of Elizabeth Holmes, who went from being the world's youngest self-made female billionaire to facing 20 years in prison.
Her company Theranos was poised to change healthcare forever.
She would have been the next Steve Jobs. Search a Dropout on TuneIn to hear what the hype is all about.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Spend Christmas Day listening to the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Featuring 5 big matchups on the holiday schedule. Unwrap the action starting at 12 Eastern when the Celtics take on the Raptors in Toronto, followed by the Bucks and the 76ers at 2:30. The holiday cheers continue with the Rockets and Warriors at 5 and the Clippers and Lakers at 8. And a showdown between the Pelicans and Nuggets at 10:30. 'Tis the season with the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade. The 2010s saw yet another revolution in the way we listen to music. With music fans giving up CDs and digital downloads for streaming services and internet radio like TuneIn. At the same time, vinyl sales continue to rise to levels not seen since the format's original decline. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
As we wave goodbye to the 2010s, TuneIn is remembering some of the decade's biggest news stories.
In 2011, The Arab Spring sparks anti-government protests across the Middle East and Northern Africa. In 2016, the United Kingdom votes to leave the European Union, forcing the ongoing Brexit crisis. And in 2019, Hong Kong erupts in 6 months of pro-democracy protest against mainland China.
Search news on TuneIn to be there when the next big story breaks.
On Christmas Eve, JP Morgan out with the predictions for the media sector in 2020. I want to bring in and start with the box office. JP Morgan predicting a decline of 3% for this year. Joining us right now is Alexia Quadrani. How do I pronounce your last name?
Quadrani.
I always mess it up. She's the famed media analyst at JP Morgan.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you think actually it's going to be a down year?
This year, 2019, should be a down year.
No, I'm talking about 2020.
2020, probably slightly down, yeah, too.
And is that a function of what? The franchise films not carrying things? Is that a streaming situation?
I really don't think it's a streaming situation. I think if you look, there's been a lot of negativity about the box office. I think folks think, there's this advent of streaming and therefore no one's going to the movies. And the fact is the attendance declines have been pretty steady, down 1% every year for the last 5 years on average. And, if you look actually the box office in the last, I think since 2000, there have been 12 record box office years. So we've seen great years at the box office. The problem is they're franchise dependent. And you look into 2020, and there's not a lot of big known franchises.
To me, that does sound like a streaming issue. I don't go to the movies as much because I can stream. I do go to the movies when it's some big blockbuster where I want to hear the sound effects and see them on the big screen, and speaks right to your...
No, I don't want to say there's no streaming impact. I just think it's overblown. You're absolutely right. There is a streaming impact. The small, kind of not huge blockbuster movies, I do think they're getting hurt by streaming. You're thinking, I could just watch something at home. I don't need to go to the box office. But I do think the big box office movies are working really, really well, and that's kind of making up for it. So when you look into 2020, you don't have a lot. You have 2 Pixars, you have 2 Marvels, but they're not like big, franchise names that you're absolutely sure you're going to go to.
Here's what I don't understand. Disney had 7, I believe, billion-dollar box office movies in 2019.
Yeah.
7, and yet the box office numbers are down. So who's suffering?
Well, they're only down 3%, and then you're coming off of a record year too. So keep in mind. But
Disney had a blowout.
To answer your question, who's suffering is all the mid-size, right? They're not quite as good. You've had a lot of movies that also didn't do quite so well. Not necessarily from Disney. I think Disney's gained tremendous.
What was the biggest? Charlie. What was the biggest bomb? Charlie's Angels? No, that
Cats.
Playmobil. That's large.
Just ask my daughters.
Give them a chance. It's coming back. They're redoing it, right?
Cats.
He changed it.
My kid did a review.
Apparently, there was a Playmobil animated movie that made like $65.
We can't name the bombs because we can't remember them because they did so poorly.
Okay, let's talk about, you have another call. This is direct-to-consumer in terms of the direct-to-consumer evolution.
Yes.
What's going to happen? Who's going to win?
2020, I think it's going to be the year of churn.
Okay.
Right? We've had this proliferation of new streaming services. There's going to be more, right? We've got Peacock, we've got HBO Max, we've got Quibi, we've got a bunch coming out. I think you're going to see consumers try them all and then turn off really quickly. I think I read the stat that there's 10% churn every month just from guys already
So is your take that people will try them and then never come back, or they will try them for a certain show or two and then turn them off so that he's watching a show on Epix right now, right?
Godfather Harlem.
Okay, so
very complicated. How do you get access to it? Do you have to subscribe to Epix? Somehow I was able to get it on Prime.
The question I have is, do you think that people will watch Ray Donovan or Success, whatever the show is, binge it all in 1 month, turn it off, then go turn on Epix, then turn it off, then go turn on Apple Plus, then turn it off like that?
There'll be some steadies. I think Disney Plus will be a steady. I think Netflix will be a steady. There'll be some steadies, but there's no question people will get onto Peacock, get on HBO Max, whatever you fill in the blank. Watch a few shows and get off.
I don't want to, maybe I'm going to be contrarian here. I could see people turning off Disney Plus.
When The Mandalorian's over?
Well, the reason is it's not clear to me that there's so much content on that service. I mean, the question is whether you think every month they're going to be launching new product that you're going to have to see. Yeah. But in terms of library, in terms of pure content, you can actually plow through a lot of it. The Sorkin family is doing that as we speak. That's why I'm mentioning
So you don't
it.
think there's enough even for, if you've got a 5-year-old kid.
Yeah, and they'll
that for
watch
the next
Frozen
10
16
years,
times.
Well, that's
the exception.
That's
Well,
the exception, though.
It's like buying the DVD, basically. If you bought all the library, it's probably a good
But that
deal.
audience is going to be an audience of people with young children.
What I worry about is actually that Netflix has maybe done a disservice to everybody, but it's done such a good job of launching new product constantly. So you're so used to now turning it on, and so almost everybody's become ADD about, is there new programming? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? If you turn on the system and the same programs are there day in and day out, I think that
it's just turning into television. I mean, everyone's like streaming. It's just TV with a bigger library. I mean, I'm not knocking. I mean, that's. But think about how smart Disney is. If your cable bill is whatever it is, and ESPN's getting $9 a month, right? $7 to $9 a month. Half that goes to Comcast or Verizon or whoever it is. Disney's getting paid $4.50. Let's call it half a $9.
Okay.
Now you've got ESPN Plus and Disney Plus on your iPhone or Apple TV. Now they're getting $11 and $12. I mean, the economics seem to work well for the producers.
For the producers,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's why you keep in mind the price point's so low, right?
Yeah, but when you add them all
When
up,
you add all up,
then you might as well pay your cable bill.
And maybe we'll see everybody go back to cable. Again, I'm not predicting that, but it's a possibility.
Final question, sports.
Sports. Oh, sports would be so topical next year. Well, it's topical now, but.
When are the big tech guys going to actually get in the game, pay huge amounts of money, and will the leagues ever really sell them because of the eyeball situation?
The answer is not this round. I think the big tech guys will be disruptors. They will try. They will offer big money, but I think at the end of the day, the NFL is not going to risk.
Because the NFL Sunday Ticket's been on DirecTV. It's the one, and for 15 years, everybody's praying for it to go somewhere else because people don't want to put a satellite dish in their house. No knocking DirecTV. Couldn't Amazon buy that?
Maybe the Sunday Ticket, but not the major Sunday packages. Not the major Sunday packages.
CBS will still have it. NBC will still have it. ABC, ESPN will still have it.
Well, Fox will still have it, but
regional sports networks.
Yeah, we just saw with the what happened with CBS and the SEC rights, right? They had the exclusive window to extend, and they decided not to. I mean, they tried to bid, and it looks like they're not keeping it.
Merry Christmas. Well, I said thank you.
Thanks so
Merry
much.
Christmas.
Merry
and a very
Christmas.
special Merry Christmas to Brian. Thank you for being here. MCC, thank you.
I'll see you Thursday.
I'll see you on Thursday. Tom Farley and your wonderful blazer.
It's been so great to
Looking
be
good.
here.
It's been great.
With you, with all of you.
Happy
Merry
holidays. Happy holidays to everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas, and we will see you on Thursday. Squawk on the Street begins right now.
Good Tuesday morning. Welcome to Squawk on the Street. I'm Carl Quintanilla and David Faber at the New York Stock Exchange. Kramer is the morning off, and joining us for the hour, Jim Stewart, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist with the New York Times, a CNBC contributor, author of Deep State, Trump, the FBI, and the Rule of Law. Rally rolls on today, we think, as the NASDAQ goes for 10 consecutive gains. Only 2 times this decade has it managed such a streak. U.S. equities close at 1 Eastern. Bond market closes at 2 ahead of tomorrow's holiday. Our roadmap begins with the Santa Rally. The NASDAQ with 9 consecutive record closes, longest streak since 1998.
Retailers are racing for that last-minute rush on this final shopping day before Christmas, but delivery companies also under pressure from the late push.
And WeWork's co-founder Adam Neumann may have big reasons to smile this holiday season. A report says his $1.6 billion exit package could get sweeter. We will fill you in. So with markets in record territory, investors are in a much better mood than they were a year ago today. If you recall, the 2018 Christmas Eve period saw the Dow tumble 653 points, S&P down 2.7, NASDAQ with a 140 drop. Since then, those stocks have obviously surged, the NASDAQ leading the major indices with a 44% gain since then. We forget, December 26th, we came in the day after Christmas, and the Dow and the S&P rallied 5%. So it was wild a year ago.
Well, I remember vividly sitting on Christmas Eve watching this show, and I probably shouldn't have been doing that on Christmas Eve, but nevertheless I was, and it was plunging, and I had this sinking feeling, and then I thought, wait a minute, it's Christmas Eve, it's just the stock market, stocks go down, they go up, I'm not going to let this ruin my holiday. And somehow I did. I put it aside. I had a great time. But it was a pretty grim. I mean, you were delivering lumps of coal a year ago at this time.
And now the Journal comes out with this piece today, guys, called basically about the everything rally, how everything has rallied this year as the Fed has cut 3 times, trade tensions have lessened. And their argument for the next year is that multiples have room to run. You can be looking at 19.5 times 178 would get you close to 3,500 on the S&P.
That's true. I mean, I was looking at the multiples myself as just a rough gauge. Are we in any kind of over-exuberant territory? And they're starting to get up there. I would say it looks kind of fully valued without a pretty good growth and earnings trajectory. But I just see no reason why we wouldn't have that. I think a key factor that maybe some people have underestimated is this incredibly low unemployment rate, with money flowing into the pockets of some, marginalized workers who haven't had a regular paycheck in a long time. And, consumer spending is a big part of the economy. I think that's going to provide a very strong floor, especially kind of like some of the basic products and materials, the retailers like Walmart that, in fact, do cater and respond to people who have not been that affluent before.
All right. I think we got some news on Uber.
Got a little bit of news involving Uber. Not perhaps that big a surprise if anybody who's been watching Travis Kalanick's continued sale of stock. He sold almost all of his ownership stake in the company. Of course, a company that he founded, but he will now be stepping off the board of directors. Uber announcing that Mr. Kalanick will resign effective on the 31st of this month to focus on what they say are his new business and philanthropic endeavors. There's a nice quote from Derek Khosrowshahi, the current CEO. Of course, remember, Mr. Kalanick had been involved in, a lot of tension there from that period of time when he was in control and then gave up the CEO-ship, but obviously retained significant ownership stakes. But that has changed significantly. Josh Lipton, you've been following this as well, of course, through the time that he started to be a seller, and that has picked up dramatically. One could imagine that would be followed by his stepping down from the board.
Yeah, I think, listen, Dave, as you just mentioned, maybe not a big surprise here. Listen, Travis Kalanick has been systematically selling his shares since November 6th. So as you point out, maybe not a huge surprise here. He was on course to actually completely exit his stake from the company. You remember the co-founder, the former CEO of the company, he actually sold about 2.5 billion worth of shares in the company since that lockup period expired last month. He actually he had less than 10% of his holdings left, according to public filings. So not a huge surprise here, but certainly a big step, a huge milestone in it for this company. Of course, the founder of this company gets a lot of credit. Uber, a lot of people would say, would not be where it was without Kalanick, though, of course, analysts, even those who are bulled up on this stock, would, of course, talk about, as you mentioned there, some of what they would refer to as the excesses at the company under his watch. But again, probably not maybe too surprising for investors given what he's been doing with those shares, David.
Yeah, it's funny, though, Josh, because there's been this sort of story out there for some time, certainly given the performance of the stock since it went public and what has been a poor performance, this idea that Kalanick would somehow come back a la Steve Jobs at Apple. Clearly we can, I think, dismiss that at this point, but there had been that thought. Certainly we know the downside of Mr. Kalanick's time as the CEO, but many also say that the company perhaps lacked the energy and passion that it may have had during his period of time as well.
Yeah, we certainly heard that stated, David. We look at the recent performance of the stock. Obviously, it's been rocky under Derek Khosrowshahi. Though we should note, when the company last reported, listen, they are on track for that EBITDA profitability by 2021. Some bulls grabbed hold of that. That was faster than what some of the street expected. Though, there wasn't all great news with that last report either. Some metrics came in at least slightly less than what the street is looking for. Remember, the stock actually took a hard hit that day on bookings and users. The Kalanick's move here, the systematic selling, we should note, you talk about the energy, but it was certainly interpreted by some as perhaps a lack of confidence in the company's future. So we'll see how investors react to this headline, though, David.
Well, we're looking at video here a moment ago of Travis on IPO day when there was this awkward dance optically between him on the floor along with other members of current management. It's hard not to think, though, I mean, you can't blame a founder for diversifying their portfolio, but liquidating your stake is almost an indictment of the company's prospects, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily jump to that conclusion. I mean, this is a fairly interesting but very specific situation where I think it was very awkward to have the founder with a substantial ownership stake who had supposedly relinquished all management oversight Did he have to get rid of every single share? I don't know, but I think for the health of the company, he really needed to remove himself both operationally and from an ownership position. And I think that's because, and I met Kalanick, I thought he was very smart, very charming. He didn't come across as the fire-breathing dragon that others knew him to be. But there has to be a significant shift here from the kind of hard-charging, aggressive, upset the apple cart, thumb in your face, we don't care about the local regulations, to a global charm offensive to win over regulators. This has gone from a scrappy upstart to a very major established company that threatens, existing interests. And Travis is just not the right person for that. So I think he did need to sell.
I do, really. I mean, I don't know.
Well, if he didn't, he's like, what's the CEO going to do when he gets the phone call from a huge shareholder? I mean, of course.
Well, he had a lot. He did. He had a lot of influence. He had a number of. Initially, a number of board seats that were sort of given to him. Remember when they had the big fight with their venture investors as well, Kalanick, and then Khosrowshahi came in, and we forget the drama that took place there. But there are a number of people, I think, Jim, who still view him, and obviously I've spent time with him as well, that think there's something missing. That founder energy and passion and now willingness to sort of fight for every last inch is missing to some extent.
Well, I'm sure it is missing, and isn't that the story of all of these, high-flying, innovative, upset the apple cart upstarts? I mean, they have to at some point make the transition from being, the scrappy newcomer on the block, challenging the status quo, to becoming part of the status quo. Now, when exactly is that going to happen? It's never going to be perfectly timed or very easy. I mean, there have been many examples of founders have trouble making that transition.
Right, but we've still got it's interesting when you think about founders. Obviously, Zuckerberg comes to mind as the founder who is still on top, still every day, making those key decisions for arguably one of the most important companies in the world.
It's actually a really good point, Jim. I mean, can you imagine Zuckerberg not even becoming chairman emeritus, like leaving the board completely and selling all but 10% of what he owned?
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of hard to imagine at this point, but. That said...
Well, Bezos, could you imagine that? No, you couldn't.
No.
I can go through a bunch.
Well, but,
Mr. Musk, who you've covered, could you imagine that?
No, but here's the difference. They have succeeded. I mean, they may be the exception rather than the rule. They have... they're at various transitional points in the histories of these companies, but they have made successfully the transition to, upstart... into establishment companies. Although, let's acknowledge, they have been running into some problems as they have become the biggest kid on the block. I mean, there are a host of regulatory issues that they're confronting now that they didn't before, privacy issues, their influence in the world, massive problems that come with their success.
Right.
And I think the jury is still out on how successfully they're going to navigate this new set of challenges to sort of growth.
Speaking of which, price is still here at 30.40, about a third below IPO at 45. What do you think about the prospects for ride sharing and all their ancillary businesses? You see us getting back to 45 anytime soon?
I wouldn't predict the timing of it, but I've been positive. I've been bullish on the story for both Uber and Lyft. I think these are transformative companies. I think, yes, they're meeting some headwinds here. There are very powerful established interests trying to block them, but the model is very good, and especially as you move to self-driving, self-delivery, you start solving some of these environmental problems. Now, I think the future is very bright. I mean, I think this really is a transformative model that could end up being very, very successful.
Well, Josh, that's going to be a key story for next year. The degree to which they get out of markets with Eats where they're not number 1 or 2, and then how the unit economics work as we get closer, what kind of advances we make toward autonomy in the years ahead.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch this story play out. Listen, Uber certainly attracted a few more bulls. I mean, one you guys know very well. I remember Jim Cramer just a few weeks ago, I think late November, thought, with the lockup period behind it, I remember Jim thought it was maybe time to take a look at Uber. In terms of Jim Stewart, my old professor at Columbia, makes, I think, a great point. I mean, he's right. Different companies at different points in their history have, a need for different kind of leaders. At one point you need kind of maybe the scrappy founder, and maybe there's the feeling that now, though, you need more of the kind of professional operator. And Travis, kind of like himself, listen, he's moved on. He has new ambitions as well. He's an venture investor now in those kind of startups like Cloud Kitchens. But certainly an interesting headline, and one I'm sure investors will be paying close attention to today, guys.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye on Travis as well, because he is an interesting fellow. And as you say, these Cloud Kitchens or Ghost Kitchens, it certainly seems to be putting a lot of capital behind them, Josh. Thank you. Josh Lipton reporting for us from out west, of course. Coming up, a day after firing its CEO, we're going to tell you what Boeing is telling its suppliers to do. Also ahead, if you thought there was outrage over Adam Neumann's, speaking of founders who stepped aside, $1.6 billion golden parachute. Well, hang on, because it could be getting even bigger for the WeWork co-founder. Here's another look at futures as we get ready. Remember, it's a shortened trading session today. We end at 1 o'clock. Looks like we may have a higher open. A lot more squawk on the street straight ahead.
One day.
This CNBC program.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
At Asda this Christmas, a whole basted turkey is just £4 a kilo, and our Grower Selection vegetables are only 20p per pack. Get a broccoli, 1 kilogram of carrots, and 500 grams of parsnips or sprouts. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Broccoli, 360 grams, ends 26th of December.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year? I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
As we wave goodbye to the 2010s, TuneIn is remembering some of the decade's biggest news stories.
In 2011, the Arab Spring sparks anti-government protests across the Middle East and Northern Africa. In 2016, the United Kingdom votes to leave the European Union, forcing the ongoing Brexit crisis. And in 2019, Hong Kong erupts in 6 months of pro-democracy protest against mainland China.
Search news on TuneIn to be there when the next big story breaks.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Hi, I'm Tom Haberstroh, host of the Haberstroh podcast. I'm partnering with TuneIn to answer a few questions and get you prepped for NBA Christmas Day. I wanted to start an NBA podcast because I wanted to take you behind the scenes and hear it from the people that make the NBA tick. It's the most intimate platform for the most intimate sport, and podcasts are the perfect medium to capture that intimacy. Search The Habershow to listen to new episodes every Friday throughout the NBA season on TuneIn.
Some new developments at Boeing. A day after the firing of CEO Dennis Muilenburg, the company's told its 737 MAX suppliers to suspend parts shipments for a month beginning in mid-January. The jet, of course, still grounded, and airlines have now taken MAX flights off their schedules as far forward as June. Some of the news outlets have begun looking at filings on a severance, estimating somewhere between 32 and 39 million. But the supplier part is what's interesting, and now those companies will have to decide how many workers to furlough or lay off for a month at least.
Well, I mean, we've known that Boeing sits at the middle of a huge economic ecosystem, and so far they were, buffering the impacts of all of this by keeping the production going. And now, the time has come where they're having to shut this down, and I think we are going to see some substantial ripple effects moving through the broader economy.
Then the discussion continues this morning about Calhoun and whether or not it's enough. Heard on the street this morning, column said it's probably not. I don't know if you saw that article this morning.
More people need to go?
Yeah.
I don't think you hollow out the company at a time when you're still dealing with a crisis. I mean, we've never really gotten an accounting of exactly what happened and who's responsible, but everyone in Boeing is not incompetent or responsible for this particular thing. I mean, it would be nice to know that they have pinpointed the responsibility and taken the right steps, but short of that, I think they need some continuity here, as well as change.
Yeah.
You have to have a mix of both of them.
And it's also it's a difficult industry from which to pluck somebody from the outside. Not that you can't do it, obviously. Calhoun had been a board member before becoming chairman, but difficult to find operating people who you can just put in here, particularly in the midst of a crisis, as that they've been undergoing. You could argue maybe the board could be up for some recomposition at some point.
Well, yeah. I mean, and we still don't know why the board waited as long as it did, but at least they finally did take action. I've also been wondering, could there be a silver lining for Boeing here? I mean, when this thing finally, the MAX, finally rolls down the runway, surely it's going to be the most scrutinized aircraft in the history of aviation. And, as a flyer, I would feel maybe there's something really good about that. It's going to be the safest plane in the air. I hope that's the case. But God knows they are really going over every single detail on that thing.
Right. Well, your point about the complexity of the company's operations is well taken. And you added yesterday the point about safety being this completely other important element to their operations. And Calhoun's been on the board of CAT. Obviously, his experience at GE, where you're dealing with multiple suppliers and precision manufacturing. So I guess to that extent, his experience is critical, right? And relevant.
Well, definitely. And if they have solved the technical problems, which I hope they have, then the communication function is going to be absolutely critical. It's going to be reassuring a vast number of constituencies, starting with the flying public, with Congress, the suppliers, the airlines, that vast, network of people they deal with. That's going to take a really, really skilled communicator to inspire confidence that it is safe and that's the primary mission of the company. And it really, I think the biggest failing of Boeing was from the beginning not to recognize what a catastrophe this was.
Well, and as Jim said on the phone yesterday, David, he believes that Muhlenberg's exit was almost a condition for getting this plane back in the air through the FAA's eyes.
It may have been, given the worsening relations he apparently had. This is according to reporting from our own Phil LeBeau and others with the FAA. And by the way, the frustration of his board and some investors with what had been continually incorrect assumptions he was making in terms of when the plane would be returned to service.
Well, not only were they incorrect, but they were incorrect always in the same direction, i.e. over-optimistic.
Right.
And nobody would have been, I think, upset if he'd been incorrect and said, it's going to be June, and then it turned out to be April.
Right.
But it was consistently too positive. And I think, optimism is a good quality in a CEO, but at some point it becomes delusional.
Yes. When we come back, WeWork's co-founder Adam Newman, speaking of optimism, could be getting even more money to walk from the company he founded. We'll get the latest on the size of his golden parachute. Take a look at futures here. Cast of the Nutcracker on the floor of the NY.
Can you customize?
Ho, ho, ho. Want to make Santa's job a whole lot easier this year? TuneIn Premium is the gift your loved ones can enjoy all year long. Featuring commercial-free news from MSNBC, Fox News Talk, and CNBC.
Global concerns about climate change not
the most generous state in the U.S. on GoFundMe is...
Plus, commercial-free music and live sports. TuneIn Premium brings the best in audio to you. Forget the stocking and stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Happy holidays. Search Premium to start your free trial.
What was your favorite podcast of 2019? Well, here's ours.
This is the Open Ears Project.
a new daily podcast in which people tell us a story about the piece of classical music that means the most to them.
Part mixtape, part sonic love letter. The Open Ears Project is where people share a classical track that gives a glimpse into their lives and allows us to hear the music and each other differently.
Brought to life things that I couldn't really put into words.
Search Open Ears Project on TuneIn to check it out.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade.
That's why I need a one dance.
The 2010s was the decade of the surprise album drop, where artists from Beyonce, Drake, and Frank Ocean to Radiohead, U2, and the late David Bowie skipped the traditional promotion cycle to bring their music directly to fans with little to no warning. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Spend Christmas Day listening to the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Featuring 5 big matchups on the holiday schedule. Unwrap the action starting at 12 Eastern when the Celtics take on the Raptors in Toronto. Followed by the Bucks and the 76ers at 2:30. The holiday cheers continue with the Rockets and Warriors at 5 and the Clippers and Lakers at 8. And a showdown between the Pelicans and Nuggets at 10:30. 'Tis the season with the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Santa Claus has been in the building, as you know. NASDAQ's going for 10 straight. We've had 2 streaks like that this decade, but longer than that, you got to go back to July of 2009. Opening bell, just in 6 minutes away.
TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2011, when UConn point guard Kemba Walker hits the game-winning jumper in the Big East tournament against Pittsburgh.
Here's Walker with 4, stops, moves left, steps back, the jumper, it's good! At the buzzer, and Kemba Walker has done it again!
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history.
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You're watching CNBC Squawk on the Street, live from the financial capital of the world, with the opening bell set to ring in just over 3 minutes on this Christmas Eve. A shortened session today. Stocks close at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Bond market closes at 2. Tesla's been an interesting story, obviously. Hit 420 yesterday, all-time high. Musk responded with some tweets of his own. Saying, whoa, stock is so high, LOL. Today, Adam Jonas over at Morgan Stanley has some thoughts on the stock at 420. We are not bullish on Tesla longer term, especially as over time we believe Tesla could be perceived by the market more and more like a traditional OEM. We are prepared for a potential surge in sentiment through the first half of 2020, but question the sustainability. It seems like we've already seen that surge to some degree, right?
Right. I think the question that Adam is posing there is a good one. Is this an auto company or is it something else? And if it's an auto company, someday the valuations are going to come down into auto company range, which are not that high. But I tend to go along with Musk that this is not just an auto company. It's got, don't forget the solar thing, the power generation, the battery operations, power. That's a huge, huge potential market for them. And as we're moving into self-driving, autonomous vehicle, artificial intelligence, who knows what frontiers they're going to be able to master. And so I like the story, and I think it has the potential to be way more than a car company.
I'm struck by Jim's forgiveness of Uber's economics.
I hope this is in the speculative Stewart portfolio.
Well, you've heard me say this before. There are some companies you value on metrics, revenue, cash flow, earnings. There are others you value on the story. And that depends on how good the story is. I happen to think that Tesla has a very good story. Uber has a very good story. I don't believe that about everything, but I think these are good stories. But I readily acknowledge you're buying the story here. You don't have any numbers to support these valuations.
And you're not sort of turned off by leverage, clearly, right? With I guess it rates at this level.
Not in these early phase companies like this. You're going to have a lot of leverage. You're going to have a lot of borrowed money, a lot of venture capital in there. It's too early to use those traditional.
I will say this, coming back to looking at it from an M&A perspective, the 420 tweet, of course, oftentimes we see boards that say no, or perhaps should say no, and in this case, as fleeting as it was, as unlikely as it was that he was ever actually going to be able to take over the company, you could make an argument that if he had and it had closed, let's call it the middle of this year, you would have gotten your 420 in cash, but here you are. Not that much later, and perhaps, another example of when it's right for a board in cases where it is more likely to say, no, that price is not high enough, that's not good enough, we'd rather take our chances.
Right, well, the 420 valuation was not Musk's power. I mean, he did not use any financial analysis, as we know, to come up with that number. But you're right. His vision was on target, even if his math was not.
There's the opening bell and the S&P 500 at the CNBC Real-Time Exchange. And the big board, as we said, it is the New York City Ballet celebrating the annual production of the Nutcracker at the NASDAQ USPS Operation Santa. As the Santa tracker is going to be in full force. And it already is around the world, but will be here in the States in just a few hours. There's been a lot of talk this morning on Squawk about Netflix, which is the Santa.
I like that. What is that?
I have no idea.
We got the fire. We got Santa crossing the globe.
That's great. That is great. Netflix stock of the decade, we've long been saying. Best S&P stock for the past 10 years, up almost 4,000%. Today, there's some wire reporting on comp for next year. Reed Hastings and Ted Sarandos, whose payment structure is a little bit different. One's much more reliant on options, Hastings, than Sarandos.
Yeah, but what's interesting is it's the same total number. And by the way, Ted Sarandos making $20 million in salary and $14.65 million in annual stock options. These are vested options, by the way. Reed Hastings, $650,000 salary, $34 million in vested stock options. But the two of them together, it's the same number, which is interesting. The board chose sort of to go in that direction. Shows you just how valuable Mr. Sarandos is, of course, viewed as well. in terms of the guy who's brought all that programming together at Netflix. And there are some pretty big numbers, although nobody can argue that Reed Hastings has not created an enormous amount of shareholder value.
Think how Netflix has transformed the media world over the last decade, where, people used to there'd be appointment TV, and you would wait for each week for a new episode of something, and now people binge watch. They can get anything they want anytime. They just push a button and come streaming in. A massive choice, great quality new entertainment. It's really been an extraordinary run. And again, I think the compensation, it's very performance oriented, which I'm not a shareholder, but if I was a shareholder, I'd like that.
Meanwhile, we've spent a lot of time discussing what the next decade is going to look like for this company, one that is going to include, and does already include, a great deal more competition than it faced early on, and whether or not it's going to start to see sort of domestic subs, at the very least, have a lot of churn and perhaps even decline as a result of the entrance of Disney+, the expected entrance of HBO Max early next year, the Peacock entrance, which is going to be a streaming ad-supported service from our parent company, Comcast, not to mention the existing players as well. It's getting crowded, we all know that, and it will be interesting to watch Netflix in terms of how they choose to go about weathering that, and whether or not their budget needs to continue to increase from what is already stratospheric numbers in terms of what they spend on content.
Well, there are two big questions over the next few years I'm really fascinated by. One is, how many streaming services is the market going to support? Is it 3? Is it 6? Is it 10? I know it's not 100 like we have on cable, but that number is going to be very critical to determine what sort of ultimate profit margins these companies are going to be able to realize. The second big question to me is, can the franchise model that Disney has used so successfully in the theatrical be transformed over into the streaming area? In other words, Disney is, without question, the leader in established intellectual property. They're doing The Mandalorian, spinning out these brands. Netflix still doesn't have the big franchise property. They're inventing, and good for them. They've done amazing original programming. But that clash will be very, very interesting to watch, I think, as well.
President's on the tape talking about North Korea, saying that if there is, in fact, a Christmas week surprise, that we'll deal with it. Says this is literally a headline out of Reuters. Trump says North Korea's surprise may be a nice surprise, might be a vase. But I wonder if you think geopolitics could come out of nowhere if, in fact, the North Koreans are interested in testing us.
Geopolitics can always come out of nowhere. But relatively few of those events, I think, end up historically having huge impacts on the market. I mean, you see something like World War II. Well, that's just like monumental effect on the global economy. But these little short-term provocations, I think, tend to be fleeting. But the risk is always there. I was reading an article recently that somebody was saying, look, there's always something bad that could happen tomorrow, but we can't go through life planning or anticipating things that we have no control over and have no way of knowing. So, yeah, the risk is always there.
The North Koreans tend to use periods like this one, where news flow is light, to try to get the most attention that they can around the world.
On the other hand, I have to say, I wasn't aware of a North Korea threat until the tweet. I mean, we don't need to play this one up too much.
They're potentially planning another missile test, which is what. But maybe we're just going to get a vase. I don't know what that means.
Right, that's a new one.
You think about threats, though, Jim. It's funny. The one that comes up most often when I talk to senior executives or boards or CEOs is the cyber threat, actually, and is the concern that at some point there's going to be something very significant, perhaps even catastrophic, you hate to say it. That would get everybody's attention. Right. Hopefully it never happens, but it certainly seems to be the paramount concern of a lot of people. You can imagine why, of course.
Well, there seem to be a lot of smart people around the world who devoted their lives to penetrating, disrupting, hacking. I don't know what motivates them, but they're out there, and I think the test is going to be who's going to win this battle, the disruptors, the criminals, or the people trying to make these systems safe.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that, we can put the resources there to block these people. But let's face it, they've scored some pretty shocking successes.
And or governments like North Korea or Iran or Russia. One of the more interesting stories, of course, of the last year, because I won't be here next year, so I can start talking about the year in stories, was the collapse almost collapse of WeWork. Adam Newman, of course, the company's founder, its CEO. Well, he's still in the news because he could be getting even more walking away money from WeWork. His golden parachute could balloon to as much as $2 billion. That from what had been a $1.6 billion deal. This is according to the FT. The additional $350 million or so would come if there is a successful IPO. Newman owns millions of profit interests, and therefore they'd pay out. If it went public, it hit $35 a share. That seems somewhat unlikely. Of course, all this began because the company's failure to be able to actually come to the public markets. Perhaps rare instance where the public markets said, no, we don't want it. And we are not going to buy it. We're not going to value it anywhere near what you think we should. That, of course, created an entire series of events that led to his leaving and SoftBank taking control.
Well, I think the Newman compensation package is one of the astonishing stories of the year. And the idea that you would have this massively visible failure in trying to bring it public, with even questions being raised about, is this whole thing a house of cards in any event? And then the founder walks away with $1.6 billion. Now he may get an extra $350 or something, but let's just look at the $1.6. That on the face of it is shocking. I've given some thought about this because what was the leverage that he had in order to negotiate that kind of exit package? And I suspect that it's very similar to what we sometimes see with borrowers. You think in a borrowing relationship, the lender has the upper hand. But there is a tipping point where if you borrow enough, you have the advantage. And he had one major financier in SoftBank that had billions of dollars at stake. So they could let him go. He could be nothing. The thing could collapse. They lose billions. He loses his net worth. So big deal. Or they could sink more money and pay him out in the hope that this actually can continue. And ironically, once you have managed to extract that much money out of a single lender or investor, you have tremendous leverage.
It's like the old joke, right? If you owe the bank a certain amount of money, it's the bank's problem, right? Not yours.
I have to say I've never reached that position, but it does happen.
No, it's a great point. It's a great point. Obviously, many of WeWork employees, some of whom were laid off, feel very differently given what happened to them versus what happened to the companies.
I'm afraid it's these kinds of stories that fuel anti-capitalist furor out there in the public. And I can get that. It was like the same thing in the Wall Street crisis where the banks are on the brink of failing and the government stepped in and, bailed them out, and then suddenly the CEOs got these huge pay packages. That was corrosive. I mean, I hear people saying, like, how could this guy get that kind of money? Capitalism is corrupt. It's not fair. Well, nothing is perfectly fair. And I do think this is an aberrational situation.
Yeah, and it really comes down to one person here, and that person is Massa's son, and his decision-making and his willingness to bet fully on Mr. Newman, as he likes to do with other founders as well. No SoftBank Vision Fund, no Massa to run it and give those enormous checks, and this is a different story.
Well, and again, the stories I read about how he swept through, Newman gave him like a tour of the office, and then suddenly he says, okay, here's a check for $4 billion or something. I mean, wow. This guy Newman he must have known how to key into this guy. If nothing else, he knew how to read his investors.
He does. He's a very charismatic gentleman who also could connect well with people. I mean, it's not like there wasn't something behind the ability to create this company, which still is there. And Marcelo Claret is the chairman, and they're trying to figure out, obviously, a strategy that's going to mean that WeWork survives and thrives into the next decade. We'll see.
Last thing, guys, from the president speaking in Florida. He does say that the China deal is done, just working on the paperwork, and that there will be a signing ceremony on the China deal. That's going to be a big story in early January, as when we get a look at the text, how much of this commitments to buy anything American is on paper, and then the degree to which we get those two together, Xi and Trump, to sign this thing.
Right. I mean, I assume he means phase one is done. And I think people have been scratching their heads trying to tally up, well, what did we give up? What did we gain? What, is this a net positive? I mean, it's a huge relief to the market that at least this phase of the fighting seems to be over, and there aren't risks of even greater tariffs on this. But I think the jury is still very much out on the details of this and whether in the end we really gain from it.
So with all that, with the president's comments, obviously, and the pre-market action, we're taking a bit of a breather on some light volume. Dow's down 11. Let's get to Bob Pisani. Bob?
Happy Christmas. Merry Christmas to everybody. Of course, 2-1 advancing to declining stocks. And that's the big story, guys. Every day, the breadth of the market advances, broadening out. And that's one of the reasons we're new highs here. Hope you like that fire. I feel like I need a glass of cognac and a Perry Como sweater at this point. The sectors are cyclicals that keep moving here this month. Energy stocks, metals and mining. Real estate's been a little bit weak. Some of those retail mall REITs have had some issues, of course. We understand what that is. And oil and gas and exploration companies, they're having a little bit of a moment here moving up. Remember, you get this mean reversion. The old losers tend to be bigger winners in the new year. December of last year, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. What a cascading series of events it was up until this moment. Last year, remember, President Trump tweeted he was tariff man on December 4th. We had a drop notably on the S&P, 3% that day. December 19th, the Fed hiked, and that created a cascading series of 4 just lousy days in the market, culminating today, December 24th, down 2.7%. Also, remember, we had Steve Mnuchin making some confusing comments. He had talked to the heads of some of the big banks. They had ample liquidity. Nobody knew what he was talking about. Other people came on and said, no, it was really about discussions about Powell and the Federal Reserve and the economy and how things were doing. And everybody was thoroughly confused by the end of the day on December 24th. At least we had a bottom of some sorts at that point. Remember what was going on. Of course, if you take a look at the markets here, by that time, December 24th, we were down 15%. So if you take a look at the S&P, there we go, the tariff man, the Fed hikes, and we bottomed and bounced back in the last couple of days. The good news is all that's over. We don't need to worry about it because everything is exactly the opposite of what it was on December 24th of last year. Trade and tariff war, it was heating up last year. Now there's hopes for truth. The Fed was raising rates last year. Now they're neutral and have been cutting rates at the end of this year. The global slowdown, well, we were worried that it was cascading down. We were going to have a very big earnings recession. Didn't happen. There's talk of a bottoming now, and there's certainly no talk of a recession, at least in the first part of 2020. And remember, we also had a U.S. government shutdown that was looming. That was a big issue. That's kind of faded in everybody's memory, but that's not happening. Of course, we have no shutdown. Is the market going to be up or down in the next year? I get this question every time this year, and the answer is nobody knows, but play the averages. I tend to look at what happens to the S&P year over year with the dividend. That's total return, including the dividend, which is 2%. Right now, guys, in the last 90 years, the S&P 500 year over year has been up 72% of the time. When you include the dividend, it's been down 28% of the time. Next Thursday, this coming Thursday, we'll talk a little bit about the long-term averages and how the stock market works under very long cycles. But the bottom line is, stick with the markets. They generally tend to be up year over year. Guys, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Bob Pisani. Now time to head to the bond pits. Check in with Rick Santelli at the CME Group in Chicago. Rick.
Good morning and thank you. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas to all viewers and listeners. You know, when I look up at Treasuries, obviously we're closing the year out on the low end of what many analysts, economists, and armchair technicians thought with regard to all maturities. If you look at an intraday of 10 today, you can see it's climbing a bit. And if you zoom into a 2-day, well, 194 today. Yesterday, a little bit lower. We've taken out the high. Zoom it back for an entire week, and you can really see we've been here before. We always seem to stop right around 195. But volume is thin. Holiday markets, early closures. Over the next several sessions, many think that we could go through. We could slice through that level. Might not have long-term implications, though, and that is the point. Another big issue is Bob was discussing how things have changed. All these yield curve spreads that went along with and in part fueled the recession talk were misguided. We spent some time in negative territory, but not much. And many of us continue to monitor 10s minus 2s. It reached a 30 basis point separation last week, and that was the widest in 13 months. But we've seen on those charts that the long end is kind of stuck. But the short maturities, not so much. Look at this year-to-date chart of 5-year minus 2-year. See how it's widened out to 10 basis points? All the spaces in the short maturity and all along the curve continue to open up. Carl, back to you.
All right, Rick, thank you very much. Rick Santelli. For more on today's movers, let's get to Bertha Coombs over the NASDAQ market site. Hey, Bertha.
Hi, Carl. Another day, another record for the NASDAQ. Apple contributing to that. But the stock of the year really has been AMD. It's the biggest gainer in the NASDAQ 100, and it's seen this huge turnaround from a year ago. A year ago, going into Christmas Eve, it was down 4 straight days, losing 14.5%. And take a look at that big turnaround. We've seen a huge turnaround in chips as the sentiment has turned around on trade. But the big comeback this year has really been for healthcare, and biotech is one of those. Biotech last year was down 9 straight days going into that December 24th low. It was down 2 straight quarters coming into here, the end of the year. It's made a really nice bounce back. And when you take a look at some of the newest listings here in the NASDAQ, the best performers are all biotechs. Beyond Meat is the next one, up about 200% for the year. Over to you guys.
All right, thanks, Bertha. We should point out also RBC takes their AMD target to 53. I think the title of the report is In Lisa Su We Trust. Best S&P of the year, as Bertha said.
I feel like we know somebody else who likes that Lisa Su. I can't remember. His name's Jim, but he doesn't look like you.
Make sure to check out our podcast. You can listen to the Opening Bell Hour, Squawk on the Street, wherever you listen to podcasts. Best podcast in the world. We're back in a moment. Dow's down 29.
The Bond Report is...
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery's running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We heart in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Heading for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Do you have a favorite true crime podcast this year? Here's a few of ours. On the latest season of Uncover, journalist Michelle Shepard investigates the unsolved case of a missing Toronto teen that has haunted her for 20 years.
Toronto police are continuing a desperate search for a missing...
And on Haunting Warhead, host Damon Fairless exposes the darkest, most shocking corners of the internet and the criminals who lurk in the shadows.
How do you take down a criminal network hidden in the shadows?
Search True Crime on TuneIn to discover these and more life thrillers.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Smart Sports Wagering Talk is now on TuneIn. This is Brett Musburger. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Search BETR. Be better informed. Be better prepared. And remember, cash and tickets is what it's all about.
As we approach the end of 2019, CNBC is taking a closer look at what investors can expect in the new year. Phil LeBeau has the 2020 playbook for the automobile sector.
Next year is a huge one for Tesla and its investors as Model Y deliveries begin. And it could rack up big sales for 2 reasons. First, crossover utility vehicles are in demand. Second, Tesla will build the Model Y at its plant in China, and China is the world's largest market for electric vehicles. Meanwhile, you can tap the brakes expecting much from self-driving cars next year. Yes, companies like Waymo and Cruise are making progress when it comes to autonomous vehicles, but the technology still has a ways to go. Bottom line, you won't see a lot of autonomous vehicles on the road in 2020. But what you should see next year are strong truck and SUV sales. Americans are still buying these bigger models at a near-record pace. Yes, they are paying more for those vehicles, and that is expected to continue. But as long as unemployment remains low and consumer confidence remains high, there will be plenty of demand for trucks, SUVs, and crossovers, which now account for 2/3 of the new vehicles sold in the U.S.
Global auto market's had its challenges, and even in the U.S., auto sales have been strong, but haven't really grown in the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, we've seen now quite a few years of very high sales, and it is a cyclical business. I think in a way, what's more surprising is it hasn't actually tapered off more than it has. I think, a year ago, the fears of investors certainly was that the sales had peaked. We're going to be seeing a declining sales period at a tough time for the automakers. But again, here's where I think the high employment has really kicked in. I mean, if you haven't had a paycheck in a long time, you suddenly get one, what do you do with it? What's one of the first things you want to do? If you've got a car that's, past its sell-by date, you want to get a new car. It's one of the most basic things you're going to invest in. And I think that has really helped prop things up.
Interesting story today, though, in the Journal worth a read about Americans overall driving less. Numbers are coming down.
Oh, that's interesting.
Moving to cities and all of that. It's true. As we go to break, look at some blue chips that are finishing the year with strong momentum. UNH, Apple leading the Dow so far for the quarter, at least. We're down 30 points on the blue chips. S&P's down almost 3.
Ho, ho, who's made a list this year? I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchase